Welcome to the world this week, the return of McCarthyism. This week, the Trump administration goes bonkers over commies, a last gasp against Iran, and Russia advances as Ukraine implodes. I'm Joe Lauria, the editor-in-chief of Consortium News. We don't often talk about U.S. domestic politics on this show, but tonight we will, as it has a strong connection to international affairs. What the Trump administration has been saying this week was already a vast exaggeration in the 1950s. It's borderline insane now. Harry Truman, who started the Cold War, wrote this about McCarthyism. Quote, "The demagogues, crackpots, and professional patriots had a field day pumping fear into the American people. Many good people actually believed that we were in imminent danger of being taken over by the communists, and that our government in Washington was communist-riddled. So widespread was this campaign that it seemed no one would be safe from attack. This was the tragedy and shame of our time." Richard Nixon once said, "At least the communists talk about the problems. Too often we only talk about the communists." Yet here we are again, talking about the communists. 35 years after the end of the Cold War, the Red Scare is back. History is definitely repeating itself this time as farce, and yet it can have deadly serious consequences. Do Trump's people really believe communism is a serious threat to the United States? That Cuba is running a network to undermine the U.S.? That nonprofit media need to be investigated for ties to foreign powers? Or is it just more hype to give cover to a campaign to silence Trump's critics? Are they just trying to armor-proof criticism of their Middle East and Ukraine policies? In the past 10 days, the White House announced it has launched, quote, "an unprecedented global offensive against the transnational threat of radical left terrorism, under which, quote, far-left extremism will be treated with the same seriousness and ferocity the world has long reserved for jihadist terrorism." Caitlin Johnstone writes, quote, "The move is premised on a White House memo known as SPM number 7, a directive that critics have been warning about for months due to its dangerously authoritarian implications and lack of congressional approval. In the words of Trump advisor Stephen Miller, this memo, quote, directs for the first time in American history all of our law enforcement and intelligence agencies to work together to disrupt, identify, defund, debank, arrest, and prosecute these political terrorists that are operating in our country." This line, Caitlin Johnston writes, strongly echoes the language of a 1967 FBI memo describing the goals of J. Edgar Hoover's program, COINTELPRO, to, quote, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of Black nationalist hate-type organizations and groups. It seems the United States is looking at a reinvigorated COINTELPRO for the 2020s, this time with police drones and AI-assisted mass surveillance. As Americans become more and more hostile towards U.S. warmongering, more and more fed up with the state of Israel, more and more convinced that their government doesn't care about them, and more disconnected from what unbridled capitalism is doing to their bank accounts, their society, and their world, their rulers are responding with the iron fist of tyranny that should be discontented with capitalism. Then there was the State Department report on Cuba last week, naming several activist organizations. The report says the Association of Extreme Left Lawyers and Radical Street Activists has played a key role in a disproportionate share of the far-left terror and violence that has plagued the United States from the 1960s up to today. Throughout its history, it has maintained intimate ties to Cuba and other communist regimes and has explicitly sought to advance the causes of international far left, including by working to defend and facilitate terrorism and extremist violence, from the weather underground of the 1970s to the violent Black Lives Matter militants and Antifa terror cells of today. In the U.S. House of Representatives, a committee has begun investigating independent nonprofit media organizations for alleged foreign influence peddling if U.S. official policy is questioned. These neo-McCarthyite attacks are tied to international affairs, to silence criticism of U.S. foreign policy, and to smear its critics. This started in the Biden administration with the anti-disinformation cottage industry born of the fraudulent Russiagate scandal to enforce orthodoxy. A government disinformation governance board was shut down after an outcry, but government censorship by private proxy continued. Now we're moving into direct government intervention that is McCarthyism, perhaps on steroids. To talk about this and the latest developments in the Middle East and Ukraine that the government prefers we not talk about, are journalist Patrick Henningsen, editor of 21st Century Wire, and Scott Ritter, former United States Marine Corps counterintelligence officer, UN weapons inspector, author, and pundit. The latest news on Iran this morning, or this evening rather, is that Trump has followed his advisor's counsel not to conduct a threatened massive strike at this time against Iran because the U.S. does not have enough intercepted missiles and because of a realization that Iran's retaliation would cause a global economic catastrophe. Gentlemen, Scott and Patrick, welcome to the show. Patrick, when I'm reading all of those statements from Trump administration officials about terrorism and the existence of communists and the Cuban network, my head is spinning. I don't know where they're getting this from. Nobody sees this. What exactly, in your view, is going on? Why are they, at this time in particular, drumming up this complete fantasy? As Truman said, it was a field day for the professional patriots. All nonsense. Seems even worse now.
All right, Joe. Look, if we have to call out all of this sort of wrung out, redundant tropes that this current government and also previous administrations run through on a daily basis, I mean, we'd never be done. This is just another one. They've just picked up off the shelf and repurposed it. And I mean, there's 100 different ways you can look at this. The whole point, just quickly, the whole point of COINTELPRO, and that program was a lot of the terrorist attacks. And that program didn't end, by the way. That's another bigger conversation, which we don't have time for. A lot of the terrorist attacks and thwarted extremist attacks were government informants or featured handlers, informants, or something like that, agent provocateurs. That's the whole point of it, is that it's a self-generating system. And again, we can go into that. But more than that, this is the establishment wanting to catch what is, because people are being pushed to the fringes, either to the far left or the far right, totally disenchanted and divorced from the centrist uniparty. So anything that's on the near fringe, like democratic socialists, they want to make it more establishment friendly. So they want to push them to the center. And these are tactics which are designed to do that. And ditto with, the far right. I'm talking about AfD in Germany is a good example. They've become an establishment friendly, and as does the National Rally in France. It's becoming a tool of the establishment. And this is a process, the Borg, as it were, the establishment will eventually do to everybody. But yeah, so that's my general thoughts on that. I mean, there's a lot that you can say about it. But the other thing I'll say, Joe, is that where is this coming from? And you also have to look at what they call far left and think pro-Palestinian, sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist. That's how this matrix is being designed from this point of view. So I would think the Israeli lobby are behind many things, including these types of efforts, because Marco Rubio is front-running this. He also front-ran the ending of the First Amendment on U.S. college campuses and did it under the sort of false pretext of these are pro-Hamas protests by students, which is just beyond disingenuous and actually fraudulent and anti-constitutional, a direct attack on the First Amendment in full view of everybody. And I think this is along the same lines and perhaps by some of the same powers.
You raised an interesting point about sting operations. They are part and parcel of this. The FBI creates these plots. There was one, I was living in Riverdale in the North Bronx, and it was a synagogue right next to my apartment. And one night, the incredible number of police were there. Then the mayor showed up, and the police chief, and the FBI New York director. And what had happened was somebody supposedly put a bomb next to this synagogue. And I questioned the head of the New York police office that night. And he admitted to me that they had got a guy, they sent him up to upstate New York and infiltrated this group and created the plot and gave them the bomb and drove them over there. And at the last minute, they gave him $50,000 and marijuana. It came out in the trial later. The whole thing was an FBI plot. Even the judge admitted that. So we have to keep that to consideration. And the other point is Miller said that we have to treat these leftist terrorists that are running around the U.S. cities like jihadists are reviled. Well, that means the U.S. will work with the leftist terrorists then, given how closely the U.S. has worked with extreme terrorist groups like the Contras in Nicaragua, like Al-Qaeda in the Middle East, like Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, even an extreme left group the U.S. and Britain supported.
Like the IDF, Joe, like the IDF.
Like the idea. Scott, is this something we should be concerned about, or is it just a bunch of nonsense that they're talking? It is nonsense, but it's dangerous in their hands, is it?
Well, first of all, let's point out that the COINTELPRO, as Patrick said, has never ended. Today, we would just call it the National Security Division of the FBI. They have a tool set. It's a tool set that's been approved by the United States Congress. Congress turns a blind eye. The judiciary has allowed it to exist without question. It's a tool set that's been enhanced by various pieces of legislation that have been put forward under the guise of the Patriot Act and things since 9/11. Joe, I live this. Okay, we're not talking about theory here. This isn't unique to the Trump administration. This is an American government tactic. You say information terrorist. In 2022, Chuck Schumer, my senator, helped push forward legislation in the United States Congress that funded a Center for Countering Disinformation in Ukraine. This was organized by the Ukrainian government with the direct assistance of the State Department and other U.S. government agencies. Under the direct supervision of the State Department, one of the first meetings convened by this Center for Countering Disinformation published a blacklist of journalists around the world, including American journalists, who are considered to be information terrorists. You see, Trump didn't invent this word, Joe. Information terrorist. And then they passed forward again in a special session brokered by the State Department. They said that information terrorists must be treated the same way as we would regular terrorists, jihadists, meaning I was marked for death by the Ukrainian government. And I have been marked for death. Joe, they have tried to kill me several times with funding from the United States government. This is straight up. You want to know why they seized my passport? Because the Ukrainian government told them to seize my passport. The search warrant that the FBI directed against my house has two classified probable cause and what they expect to find. Why are they classified? Because it was written by the Ukrainian government, given to the FBI. But when I say written by the Ukrainian government, it was written by the FBI field office in Kiev, given to the FBI field office, and then given to the Department of Justice to create a search warrant to come at my house. They debanked me, Joe. They debanked me. Every tool you said that the Trump administration is getting ready to use against so-called left-wing radical information terrorists, they used against me. So this is an American problem. This isn't a Trump administration problem. It's a problem that the National Security Division of the FBI has run wild, run crazy. These are the guys that went after Donald Trump. These are the guys that manufactured Russiagate. These are the guys that have done a whole bunch of other things. And you can't shut them down. It's like the CIA's Directorate of Operations. Everybody says they want to reform, but you can't reform that which you don't know. And the FBI's National Security Division is as corrupt as the day is long. They are out there violating the constitutional rights of American citizens every single day. The only reason why they stopped going after me is that the foreign agent influence that they manufactured was the same thing they tried to pin on Trump. And so because Trump got a pass, I got a pass. I got a pass because I'm innocent. You know, they took everything in my frickin' house, everything in my frickin' house. And you know this, that if there was anything wrong with me, anything, not just the foreign agent, anything, if I had hiccuped at the wrong time, they would have arrested me. They had an open grand jury investigation, Joe. They subpoenaed my tax records. They went after everything. They seized my bank records. If there was, for all you people out there that say I'm funded by Russia, stick it in your ear. All right. My finances have been scrubbed by the National Security Division of the FBI trying to put me away for frickin' life. And they didn't. But the only reason why that doesn't mean they won't do it. It's just that Trump got shrouded with the Russia thing. And so they made the Russia thing go away. But here's the problem. All these people are going to be called foreign agents. This is the biggest problem we have right now, this Foreign Agent Registration Act. It is literally a cover for suppression of free speech. It's a cover for suppression of political opposition. It is the most ridiculous thing in the world. First of all, Israel is the largest foreign agent out there, and they own all of America, and we're not prosecuting them. The British are a huge foreign agent. They actively conspire against America. We don't go after them. It's something that is selectively applied to people when you want to shut them up. And this is the America we live in. This isn't a Trump administration invented by Donald Trump thing. Stephen Miller didn't wake up and say, I want to start calling people information terrorists. It's a national security division tactic that's been used for a long time to shut people up, to intimidate people, to silence people, and it's going to be used again. And until the American people wake up, this is why I tell everybody, read your damn Constitution. Understand, read the Federalist Papers, understand the importance of free speech and due process and all these things that I can't say we take for granted, because not a single American, it seems, understands what this is about. You can't take for granted something that you don't know. And the American people don't know their rights. They don't know the Constitution. They don't know what this nation is supposed to stand for. And they sit back there and say, well, those silly radical left-wing people. And you know what? They can turn it on you in a heartbeat. The moment they decide that your voice is inconvenient, the same tools they're using to shut down the people that you may not agree with politically will be turned against you. Free speech is free speech, and it's absolute. 100% absolute, and we need to protect it. This is why, in the good old days of free speech, the ACLU would defend the Ku Klux Klan's right to rally in town, not because they supported the Ku Klux Klan, they despised the Ku Klux Klan, but the Ku Klux Klan had a right to rally. Everybody has a right to speak. Everybody has a right to publish, and yet they're going to shut it down because of what? It's a fear tactic. There's no threat to America from any ideology. There is none, if the Americans believed in their Constitution. Because what is the antidote to bad ideas? Better ideas. For all the people out there saying, oh, their ideas suck, then come up with a better idea. And then use your free speech to articulate this better idea. And then engage in debate, discussion, and dialogue. That's the American way, to give everybody a hearing and let the better ideas prevail. The fact that the Trump administration is going this route is proof positive they don't have an idea. They don't have an ideal. And they recognize this. And so the only way they can continue to survive, because they can't articulate what they stand for and what they believe in and what they're trying to do, is to suppress those who speak out against them.
It's a bit hypocritical, as you pointed out, Scott, that it was Trump himself who was a victim to this thing, and now they've turned around. And this is Trump's version of this. I'm just curious about the timing. You raised your hands, Patrick. You were also involved on a list.
Yeah, three lists actually. All the hit lists, the kill lists, but one of them boasts about USAID funding right on their website, and I'm going to say that whole cosplay with Elon Musk and Doge and defunding USAID. I think the record will show by the end of this president's term, based on initial reports that we've been seeing in recent months, that the funding to the National Endowment for Democracy and USAID and all these stalwart soft power, smart power programs is going up. They're pouring more money into these things. So, by the way, Thomas Massie, Tulsi Gabbard on some of these Ukrainian hit lists as well. So it's just, to me, just unbelievably crazy that this would be allowed the one call from Washington and those websites would be down. They're just an abomination, but they're allowed to fester, and they've morphed into all these other spin-offs. And so I know Scott's probably knows about more of them, but I know I'm on at least 3 of them. But I mean, that's me. as a journalist, as an independent journalist, but there's elected U.S. officials on those websites, which should be unacceptable, no matter what party you're from, or no matter who the president or the administration is. So, I mean, I just pointed that out because all this talk about, oh, Elon came in with the chainsaw and cut out USAID and all that stuff. No, it's completely false.
Can I just throw in on the USAID stuff? What they cut out was USAID was one of the most corrupt programs ever, not just ideologically corrupt because it doesn't promote freedom. It's used as a soft power regime change tool. My wife's from the Republic of Georgia, and what USAID has done to Georgia is despicable. I mean, trying to destroy a culture from within. That's the USAID model. It's a soft power model that uses the Peace Corps to, and my daughter served in the Peace Corps, and the Peace Corps is honorable, but the Peace Corps, every project that they promote in the Peace Corps is funded by USAID. And it's a way of getting these nice young kids to come in and say, hi, we're friendly Americans. We're here to help you. And here, let's get you addicted to USAID heroin money. And everybody goes, oh, God, it's great. I'm shooting up the free USAID money. And now they get addicted to it. And next thing you know, the big boys step in, which means it's the front for the CIA that's running the whole damn thing. So USAID is corrupt. But USAID was used by the Democrats to create nepotistic funding mechanisms so that wives could have $1 million, side jobs, selling, sex toys to Afghan women, something of that nature, some ridiculous stuff like this. And so what they did is they came in and they identified these. They said, this is the corruption. They weeded it out. All they've replaced it now is with Republicans doing the same thing. It's the hypocrisy is the word, but the Republican Party under Donald Trump has become as despicably corrupt as the Democratic Party was under Obama and Biden. It's the same thing, just different flavors. And this just speaks volumes of this nation. Joe, I get more and more depressed every day because you see things that the average American, I mean, we know the difference between right and wrong. We know the difference between good and evil. We know it inherently, and yet we are tolerant of so many things we know to be wrong. Look, we sit there and turn a blind eye at a president, committing insider trading fraud on a massive scale on a daily basis. And everybody's like, well, that's okay because the president says that's okay. It's not okay. And we're allowing this kind of fraud. It just, the whole system is corrupt. I mean, at some point in time, you got to put it to sleep. It's not about curing it. It's about ending the suffering, ending in agony. How can we save this democratic experiment? And it was an experiment. Ben Franklin was asked, what kind of republic we have, or what kind of government we have, a republic, if we can keep it. Well, we lost it. It's gone. And I don't know if we're ever going to find it because the American people are sleepwalking. I see it on a daily basis. Good people. My neighbors are good people. Really, they are good people. And yet they're sleepwalking by just turning a blind eye to all the wrongdoing that's happening. And what Patrick said about USAID, it's just a fraud. It's just a straight up fraud. You're 100% right, Patrick, about Doge being eye candy, a little distraction while the corruption continues. They just have painted it with a different brush, made it a different color, but it's the same thing.
Well, this is why we invite you on the show to lighten your mood, Scott, so you don't get further depressed. You can get it off your chest here. Patrick, two things concern me. One, Cuba. There's no question that Rubio has got I don't want to use this word, but he's got something for Cuba. He's had it all his life from Cuba, hates Castro with a passion, the whole thing. He is a Gusano par excellence. They got one in the State Department. The State Department came out with this absurd report in which Cuba is running parts of the United States. This country could barely feed itself right now based on the U.S. pressure. And they are a threat, just the way Russia's a threat. Well, not exactly, but something like Russia being a threat to Europe. So this false threat of Cuba, clearly they seem to have Cuba targeted. Now, the problems that we're going to talk about Iran in depth in a moment, but the problems that they're having in Iran, will that deter them at all from engaging in Cuba? Or they try to get out of Iran so they can go to Cuba, in your view?
I don't know, Joe, you sound like a Havana syndrome denialist. I'm not sure, but anyway, um, so Marco Rubio, he has so many job titles. He's National Security Advisor. He's the Secretary of State. He's also Viceroy of Cuba and Caracas. That's pretty impressive LinkedIn profile for Marco. No, what clearly this is a total departure from international law, from years of precedent law, of treaties, of United Nations Charter. You know, what the U.S. have done to Cuba is just blatant an act of war by laying siege to the country. I'm not even talking about 75 years of sanctions. I'm talking about the blockade which the Trump administration did. And the one of the reasons they went for Venezuela was to first to cut off the supply to Cuba, also to send a message to other countries, including Mexico and other potential allies of Cuba, that you're not going to be giving any fuel or any assistance or any provisions at all, even basic humanitarian provisions to Cuba. What did Cuba ever do to the United States but embarrass it? Really, that's its only original sin, is it embarrassed the United States at the Bay of Pigs, and just by surviving is a huge embarrassment to the U.S. So Cuba hasn't done anything to America, but Rubio and others talk them up like this is some evil, bloodthirsty regime that's eating babies, and so forth. If you want to see what the extreme end of the propaganda looks like, just look at all the things they've been saying about Cuba right back to the Spanish-American War, if you really want to go all the way back. But it's just the same thing. So the war crime of Venezuela is unbelievable. That's just been brushed under the rug by everybody, and every single person in the administration is complicit in that and guilty. And where's the money gone, by the way? What they've done to Venezuela is running all of their oil sales through a U.S. Treasury account. What I mean, $18 billion so far? Like, where has it gone? Nobody knows where it's gone. Nobody, it hasn't been audited. And
Wasn't it
for
in the
all we
bank in
know,
Qatar? Wasn't it in Doha
I
somewhere?
don't know. It could be
Yeah.
in World Liberty Financial stable coins in Abu Dhabi for all we know. We don't know. So, but the point is, this is what they did to Iraq after the war. They ran their whole economy through a Federal Reserve account. So if the Iraqi government ever goes off the reservation, they can just flip the switch. That's a huge sort of Damocles hanging over Iraq, that it can never be sovereign. And that, in a certain way, controls Middle East geopolitics, because Iraq can't say we're closing our airspace. They can't say, no, no one's going to be using our airspace nor the KRG to attack or do anything against the Iranians. They can't do that. They can't go that far to evict the United States officially from all of their sort of encampments and positions in their territory. They can't, because of this thing that's been set up right at the point of the Iraq War after 2003. And they want to do the same thing to Venezuela. They would like, Trump said he's going to do it to Iran. Good luck with that. Good luck with that one. It's not going to happen. But they've threatened that. So that's the U.S.'s idea of how they're going to control in the post-petrodollar era, through coercion, force, threats, protection rackets, blackmail. This is how they're going to collect tribute for the empire, basically. And so, I mean, I honestly think if they go for Cuba with a ground invasion or whatever, I mean, it would be just, for Hegseth, it would be a wet dream, of course, and for Fox News. But I think that would be the straw that breaks the camel's back, ultimately, of the Trump administration and the United States. I mean, the optics on that would just be horrible globally. And the irony is, it would be that weak neighbor near abroad that would be the straw that breaks the back of the great U.S. empire. That's just me in my sort of, interpretation of that.
It'll be Bay of Pigs 2.0. But I think that creating this fear and trying to create this fear in the American public that Cuba has got this extensive network and that is very similar, as I was saying, to what the Europeans are saying about Russia, because they want to go to war with Russia by 2029, but they need their people to be afraid and believe that Russia's about to attack. When at the same time they're ridiculing Russia for not being able to take the Donbass after 4 years, so that all of a sudden they're going to be in Paris by Christmas. Scott, do you see an invasion of Cuba or a bombing of Cuba or some kind of attempt to overthrow the government and finally get the big prize Rubio's been dreaming about all his life?
I mean, to answer that question, I'd have to know what the CIA knows about Cuba. As you know, before Venezuela, I said I don't believe the United States is going to put boots on the ground in Cuba in a large way. That I believe that the United States, the CIA would come in and buy off people, and that we would take Maduro, and that's exactly what we did. With Cuba, we're setting them up for the I don't think it would be a Venezuela type exercise, but I think it would be a Panama type exercise.
Mm.
A large scale military operation designed to take out the regime and those things that are immediately holding the regime together. If it works and the CIA's bought off the right people, I think that the Cuban operation could be over in very soon, in a matter of a week. If it doesn't work, then we have a Black Hawk Down type situation where American troops, because we're not going to go in with overwhelming occupation type forces, American troops would be stuck. It would be an embarrassment, a humiliation. We don't have a big enough army to physically invade Cuba. That's just the way it is. If the Cubans have the revolutionary spirit and they want to resist, we can't take them. And Patrick's right. If we tried to, it would be the utter humiliation of the United States. It's so this is the tough part. I used to believe there were smart people in the U.S. government. People who would say, "Nah, it's a bad idea. Not going to do it." Look, the smart people in the Pentagon talked Donald Trump out of, responding after a U.S. drone was shot down over the Strait of Hormuz in his first term. Trump wanted to retaliate, hit Iranian air defense sites, and people say, "Yeah, but if you do that, they're going to strike back, and you're going to strike back." We get a cycle of escalation. Next thing we know, they've shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and we can't take it. That's the funny thing, Donald Trump. We never knew that we couldn't take the Strait of Hormuz. You're lying, Donnie, baby. They told you couldn't take the Strait of Hormuz back in your first term, and you backed down because you understood that if they did take the Strait of Hormuz, it would take you 9 to 15 months to mobilize the 800,000 to 1.2 million troops it would take to actually take the Strait of Hormuz. So anybody who talks about we're going to invade Cargill Island, we're going to do this, I'm just telling you right now, Joe, it isn't going to happen. For us to take the Strait of Hormuz is a million-man operation, and we don't have a million men. Not that we could deploy there. So it's a pipe dream until we mobilize those troops. Taking Cuba is a million-man operation. A million-man operation if they resist. We may try a Panama Canal type thing with the 82nd Airborne, some Ranger battalions jumping in, seizing airfields, the Marines coming in, seizing some things, Delta Force and the SEALs coming in and whacking people. And if the CIA's bought off the right people, next thing you know, Cuba's fallen. The CIA is active. They're not even hiding it. The director of the CIA flew to Cuba to meet with people. So it's like, what do so I don't know. I don't know what the CIA knows. I don't know how far they've gone. They've been trying for years. But Cuba is a revolutionary government. There is a spirit of revolution in Cuba, that I think is more genuine than the spirit of revolution that was in Venezuela. Because apparently the spirit of revolution hasn't manifested itself in some sort of revolutionary resistance to what the United States has done. Money talks. And sadly, that could be the case in Cuba too. So to me right now, I don't know which way this is going to go. I'm hoping that we do have old Cuba hands. That's the one thing I can say is that over the years, we've gotten people in and close, and we've had some pretty accurate reporting about the situation. And it used to be that it was recognized that, while there were, of course, political grumblings here and economic difficulties here, that overall Cuba was not conducive to, the Cuban government was not conducive to being removed easily. I'm hoping that those voices still resonate, but, we had wise voices tell the president that, killing Ali Khamenei was not going to generate regime change, but he did it anyways. under the belief that it would generate regime change. So this is a president that lives in his own world of his art. And this is the danger of having a Marco Rubio as both the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor. Secretary of State, he can be called before Congress and be scrutinized, have to defend his stance. National Security Advisor doesn't have to. And so this is why it's constitutionally, questionable. He can do things as National Security Advisor that escape the purview of Congress. He can head up committees. And believe me, I can guarantee you right now in Washington, D.C., there are committees that are dedicated to, covert operations against Cuba to overthrow the regime that Congress knows nothing about. What kind of oversight is that? What kind of democracy do we have? But I don't know. This, like I said, in order to answer your question accurately, I need to know what the CIA knows about Cuba, and I don't.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I just wanted to comment on what Scott said and maybe get Scott's answer to that. I mean, in previous administrations, the vice president was always the sort of nominal head of the National Security Council. At least it had been like that in previous administrations. Not in this administration. And so Marco Rubio's kind of wearing that hat. J.D. Vance definitely is not wearing that hat. What do you think about that, Scott?
No, I think you're right, but that's one of the reasons why this happens is the National Security Council doesn't function as the National Security Council anymore. I mean, the National Security Council, we used to have a process. We used the interagency process. That's how policy was made. Where the president would have an idea that would be articulated. The National Security Advisor would then organize a deputies meeting. And the vice president would oversee it, and they would sit there and talk about the idea that the deputies would form interagency groups, and they'd work it through down and bring it up, and then they'd come back and the deputies would brief it, take it to the principals, which are the actual cabinet members, and then they take it to the president, and it would become official policy. We now have a president that wakes up in the morning, gets gas, and tweets, and that becomes a policy statement. We literally, a policy is made through social media postings. Now, I believe that there are some people in the National Security Council who are entrusted with overseeing some of these social media posts. But that's the way policy is made right now. If I were a secretary of anything other than state and defense, I'd live in terror waking up in the morning trying to, go, oh my God. Normally the 9 o'clock meetings are boring in the morning. Hey guys, what are we doing? Well, we're just continuing to have interagency meetings to talk about this. Nope, the president put out a statement that fundamentally changes everything we're doing. Okay. Now the right strategy is, okay, everybody take the day off and wait for the next tweet tomorrow, which probably cancel out what he tweeted today. But because that's the insanity of this, but we have policy by social media posting right now, and it's not coordinated policy. It's policy that is made within the inner circle of Donald Trump's world. Marco Rubio plays a role in this. I think Pete Hegseth continues to have the ability to do this. Mike Radcliffe also is playing a role, but people like Sebastian Gorka, nobody talks about this guy, but he is literally one, and Stephen Miller. These are guys who are writing social media posts without any checks and balances, without any due diligence, without any effort at interagency process. They just write what they want, and because it's put out under the president's name, it becomes policy. So yeah, the vice president has been pushed aside, and he's an eyewitness to things. I think it's got to be pretty frustrating for him.
I wonder if Batista has a grandson waiting in the wings. I'm sure that Miriam Adelson wants to move her casinos back into Havana if given the opportunity.
Yeah, too bad Robert De Niro's aged out. He could do a reprise as some sort of gangster. And
yeah, and Sinatra's not around anymore to do guys and dolls. Anyway, Patrick, one last thing on this McCarthy issue before we move on to Iran and Ukraine, and that is this committee in the House that's looking into nonprofit media organizations and foreign funding. This was rumored and talked about even more than a year ago. Now it seems like it may be happening. You're incorporated in the UK. You're 21st Century Wire?
No, we're incorporated in the USA.
I see.
So yeah, and the FBI already have a file on us. So they got all the information they need. Um,
How do you know
because of
that? 'Cause I'd like to find
uh,
out if they have one. How do you know that? Because I'd like to
uh,
find out if consortium news, if they have a file on us.
uh, let's just say um, that I was caught up in the Russian disinformation accusations, and they were just being nice and wanted to check up on us and see that
Hmm.
we're okay.
Oh, okay. Well,
Let's just leave it there. That's
considerate of them, huh?
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I hope you told them where to go. But so this is a real concern then that they're maybe moving on this, that they're going to
Well,
try
yeah,
to
well,
remove nonprofit status, which would destroy
Joe,
a lot of us.
Joe, do you know how the system works? They don't even do their homework. They rely on NewsGuard to run the profiling for them, and then they just can say, "Well, you're on NewsGuard," and so NewsGuard through is as a private entity or not for profit run by Michael Hayden and people like this, and who's the former head of the DHS, John Ridge is his name Ridge? Yeah,
Yeah,
Ridge.
the first
That's who,
DHS,
Tom,
Tom Ridge, yeah.
Tom Ridge. Okay. So they do all the doxing. They get college graduates to come in, do all the doxing, and then run the profiles up there. And the FBI agents just go and read NewsGuard. And that's how they do their shortlisting of things to paper their files to keep busy. I'm telling you how the system works.
Just to give them their side of the story, they claim that they are just advisors. Hayden Ridge, Jimmy Wales, founder of Wikipedia, is also on their board, and a former NATO Secretary General.
Hmm.
Uh, his name's escaped me. They claim that they're only advisors. They have no role whatsoever in the investigation, in the review of news organizations. That's
Yeah,
their
it's
claim.
that, and the other ones. There's unlimited amounts of these types of organizations, and they really mushroomed under
Right.
Trump 1.0, and then
Yeah.
under Biden
Yeah.
as well. And the State Department's funding a lot of them, and a lot of them were discredited with the Twitter files because
Right.
that was a good sort of purge of public information about a lot of these activities that were all being funded by the U.S. government or grants to academic institutions running all these profiling. In fact, the University of Washington was the first to dox me, and I was even done in a Harvard Neiman Lab conference or project as a dangerous disinformation source, being too sympathetic to Russian and Syrian or Assad narratives and so forth for years. And that's all ultimately the funding's coming from the government or from the defense industry, basically. And these are disinformation labs. There's plenty of them. It's not as in vogue though as it was a couple years ago.
No, but we got a new iteration of this with Trump. What was that dashboard that was called? Jefferson dashboard?
Hamilton
Hamilton.
68. Yeah, I was on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so was I. My name was on there before I became editor concerned.
Yeah,
Because other
I
than
grew up
that,
in
I don't.
Hamilton. I
Yeah.
grew up in Hamilton, Massachusetts, so I thought that was kind of a
Ah,
nostalgic thing.
maybe that's how you got
Named
there.
after Alexander Hamilton, same guy.
Well, I grew up in New York City where Alexander Hamilton is buried right now. Maybe that's so down on Wall Street. Um, okay, let's move on to the latest news, which just broke a little before we went on the air, is that Trump has seen the light and he's been told by his advisors, don't do this massive attack against Iran that he threatened, because as the New York Times stupidly says, it could cause an economic crunch. How about a worldwide economic catastrophe? They call that a crunch, the New York Times. But more importantly, they're running out of Patriot missiles and other anti-missile defense, Scott. That is what the New York Times, anyway, says is the main reason why Trump has backed down. But they also admit that Iran, is not yielding, and they can't defeat Iran. That's the subtext of this article. What do you think's going on here? Why did Trump back down?
We ran out of ammunition.
Ran out of ammunition. That's simple.
It's this, but the thing is, Trump knew this. I mean, I've said this for some time. Trump gives away the farm. He's not very good at hiding things. When Trump says, "I think we're going to have a 3-week campaign," that's because somebody told him, "Mr. President, we have ammunition for 3 weeks." And then he said, and we're going to break this campaign down into 3 phases. Phase 1, it's going to be 1 week, and we're just going to sort of be like shock and awe. like, we really got some bad stuff here. We're going to kick your ass, and if they don't do that, we move into phase two. We're going to blow up bridges. We're going to blow up, power generation capability, and if they don't have that, then we're going to come in at phase three, the big bombers. We're going to take everything out and it's going to be annihilation. And I said, when that happened, I said, if phase three, one of two things are going to happen. The United States will be compelled to back down, or we go to phase four, which is we have to bring Israel in to follow on, because we're out. We won't be able to sustain the fight. We don't have the capability of doing this. We've been disguising a lot of things. If you take a look at where the most of the bombing that's taken place is right along the coastline. And a lot of it isn't bombing, but actually using HIMARS and ATACMS missiles fired by the U.S. Army and Marines from positions in Bahrain, Kuwait, the UAE, to hit things and then we've been using JDAMs, which we can. It's a satellite guided bomb, but we can basically stand off the coast of Iran, drop a JDAM, and it will glide in and be able to hit a coastal target. Now, to hit deeper in Iran, then we'll use what's left of our Tomahawks and our JASSMs and other standoff weapons. We're out of them. We used them all. They're done. Finished. We got nothing left. And here's the problem. Iran has everything left. And the other thing is, we don't know what we're bombing. I'm just going to straight up say that. When the postmortem? There, that's a big word. Marines shouldn't use them. When the postmortem is written about our targeting, you're going to find out we were over reliant upon AI, data mining to generate targets. We don't have experts on Iran, literally. I mean, look, Joe, I used to be a targeting guy. And I have to tell you, in order to do targeting the right way, the old school way, you had to be an expert. You had to actually know what the hell it was you're going to bomb. You had to know the weapons that you're going to use to bomb it. You had to put all it together, and you had to have the law, because you had to put it through a legal review to make sure that it didn't violate the law of war. Today, Hegseth, less legality, more lethality. That's his motto, and that's why we're committing war crimes on a daily basis. But we don't know what we're bombing. We're blowing up empty buildings. We're going after target definitions. We want to suppress the Iranian missile launch capability. Give me Iranian brigade headquarters. So Clyde goes around and pulls up something from 2006. It's an empty building now. Blow it up. Or it might be a school like Manab. Blow it up, kill it. We're not doing any harm to the Iranians. No harm is being done. They have evacuated everything about. I found out we were bombing Parchin the other night. Parchin, that's their missile factory outside of Tehran. If you think for a moment that anything of value is left in Parchin, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you. You get a good deal. Everything's been evacuated. All these underground sites. We talk about Fordo, which was bombed during the 12-day war. It wasn't designed to be, an underground nuclear facility. It was designed to be an evacuation facility, one of hundreds of other facilities throughout Iran, dug into the mountains using deep boring technology, clearing it away so that you could evacuate things of importance. And Iran is full of these underground facilities, and they have taken everything of value and put them in there. And we're blowing up empty buildings. The Iranians will just simply pour more concrete, build new buildings, bring this out, put it up. They will reconstitute like this. Meanwhile, everything we've built in the Middle East over the course of the past several decades is being blown to smithereens. Radar systems worth our way of fighting war is so pathetic, because again, war is complicated business, and what we've done is we've tried to oversimplify it. We want to come in and we've tried to intimidate people with American technological supremacy. We have the biggest and the best weapons. We go faster, and we're invisible, and we're America, and we can do all this. There was a movie had a great song, America. Yeah. But you know the movie I'm talking about, the little puppet movie, Team America. But great theme song. But because it epitomizes the stupidity of America. So we build these systems that are designed to give us sort of information overload so that we can be impressive in the short phase. But what happens when the short phase doesn't dent the enemy, like Iran? And then they turn around, they blind us. They start blowing up our radars. Now we're blind and our systems don't work and our communications don't work. What happens when they found out that all you have to do is flood us? We have a system that can shoot 16 interceptor missiles. Well, if the Iranians fired 16 missiles and all 16 hit, it would look like it's good, but our missiles don't work, so that doesn't matter. But still, we could pretend. But the Iranians are firing a whole bunch more. We run out of missiles and then they blow everything up. And it's game, set, match Iran. They own us right now. We're not being told this. The American people, they own the battlefield. They own every aspect of this war because they don't care about the bombs that are hitting Iran. They don't care. They're hitting things that we do care about. And now we were going to escalate. Ansarallah the other night fired 5 ballistic missiles into an Aramco refinery. Again, for all the people out there, I won't mention names, Gilbert Doctorow, who sit there and talk about, Ukrainian drones hitting Russian refineries. Oh my God, it's horrible. Look at the frickin' fires, guys. It's a tiny little flame. It's quickly put. I was an oil field firefighter, Joe. Okay, I've done this. I've gone in. I did a lot of stuff in the firefighting business. And the point is, that's standard operation. Look at the glow from the Saudi facility. Look at the giant fireball that's going. That's what happens when things go boom in an oil refinery. That thing ain't working forever. All right? When things go pop, 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 you get a little flame, some smoke, it gets turned off, it gets repaired. That's Russia. Ukraine has never made anything go boom in a Russian oil refinery. Ansarallah made things go boom in a Saudi and it shut down. And the Saudi Arabians woke up and went, oh my God. And everybody else woke up and went, oh my God. And Trump woke up and went, oh my God. They're going to shut down everything. Yes, Mr. President, that's what they've said they're going to do. Shut everything down. And Kuwait's phoning it in going, we're running out of water. Desalinization done. Power generation done. We're about 3 more missile waves before we lose Kuwait. This is what happened. We lost this war. But we lost this war on day one. This was always a bluff. This was always a bluff because the president is advised by the world's dumbest people. The people who believe the propaganda of regime change. I don't claim to be anything. I study the region superficially, and I say superficially is I know what it takes to be an expert. There's a wonderful book called Outliers. I don't know if people read it, but it takes like 10,000 hours to become an expert. They talked about how the Beatles had to play in Hamburg before they became the Beatles and, all this kind of stuff. I know for me to be a firefighter, I had to put in 10,000 hours of firefighting to become a good firefighter. To be a Marine intelligence officer, 10,000 hours of actual, real world intelligence to do this kind of stuff. So when I talk about Islam, I know I'm not an expert. I don't pretend to be an expert, but I was talking about Iran and the futility of regime change. And I mentioned, I said, if you don't know about Ali, Hassan, Hussein, and Karbala, then you don't understand anything about the reality of this region. Well, that resonated. I mean, I've been invited now to go on pilgrimages and to go and meet the senior Shia people in the world because they want to teach me about this. But I'm just an independent journalist. Our government that's making policy, they don't know anything about this. They don't even try, Joe. They don't even try to know. And we are so ignorant going forward. We are doing things that only make things worse for us. Why didn't they consult anybody in the oil industry before they went on this? I just came from a week-long meeting with oil experts. They easily could have told the president, don't do it. Don't do it. Please don't do it. But he did it. These people surround themselves in this bubble of ignorance. Everybody advising the president is stupid. There's not a single expert within that window. They're just all Stephen Miller, Gorka lunatics who have ideology. But we lost this war on day one. I said that. I think I might have said on your show. We lost it with the first 6 missiles we fired back at the beginning on February 28th. The first 6 missiles fired. The ones that hit Manab and the ones that hit Ali Khamenei. We lost the war at the second that happened because that proved we didn't know what we were doing. That proved that we were being governed by it. And everything that's come after that is proven that. I hope this time the president realizes it. But Joe, this isn't the first time. Ask him why he signed the MOU. Well, hell, he told us. He was forced to sign the MOU because we were running out of oil. So he's already gone through this exercise. The first 39 days, we tried to bomb them in the submission, didn't work. We ran out of ammunition and we're running out of oil. JD Vance came out and said, yeah, the MOU, it's just to buy time to get more oil. So it was all that. So what's he going to do now? Is he just going to say we just need to have time for more oil? That's why I just published a piece called Hybrid Diplomacy. We can't speak of normal diplomacy now. Diplomacy has simply become a mechanism of controlling chaos. And the Trump administration appears to want nothing more than chaos in the Middle East, which is why we have to be careful about the president saying he's woken up. Woken up to what? He's actually, I think, in his mind, achieved a great victory because there's chaos. He just now has to find a better way of managing this chaos. And so hybrid diplomacy is going to kick in, the artificiality of negotiations, but don't believe that the president's trying to actually solve this problem. The problem has been solved through the chaos that he has imposed, not just on the Middle East, but the world. There's a larger picture here. China, what we're doing to Chinese oil supplies. Although, again, there's Stu. I was somebody who was like, oh yeah, China's going to be putting more pressure on Iran because China's going to be on the squeeze. And I had real Chinese energy experts come up and go, Scott, the Chinese have been preparing for this for decades. They have more energy reserves than you can shake a stick at. China's not even blinking right now. We will never exhaust China's energy reserves. Well, then this is hopeless. Why did the president do this? What's he trying to do with Russia? He's not going to exhaust Russia's energy reserves. So but they are trying to impose chaos. Why? Because we no longer have a rules-based international order that functions properly. We can't control the world through the rules-based international order. That has collapsed. And so we can't yield control of the world to a multipolarity, replacement, BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So how do we prevent these multipolarity from filling the vacuum created by the collapse of the rules-based international order? Chaos. And that's the defensive mechanism of the Trump administration right now is global chaos until which time they can figure out what they can do.
Just a quick aside, a question from our producer, Kathy, about Palantir. You said Trump's advisors are incompetent, but what about Palantir? Despite their bravado, is their own incompetence had something to do with this?
Look, you're talking to a guy, Patrick. Here's where I'm going to throw it back to Patrick.
Yeah.
AI. I just spent a week with some of the most fascinating people in the world. And we had talks about artificial intelligence. You're talking to somebody who hates artificial intelligence. I hate the concept of it, but I also believe that it just doesn't work, that it's a crutch and it leads to bad results. Palantir, I think, is a facade, it's a fraud, it's a fake. And they have enough data where they can manufacture something that looks good, but when push comes to shove, Palantir will collapse just like everything will collapse because artificial intelligence isn't. It's just advanced programming, and it's only as good as the people who are programming it, and there's nothing good about Palantir.
You have something to add on that, Patrick?
No, not really. Just that quality and quantity are two different things, and AI delivers a lot of quantity, but it's lacking on quality. And when you're talking about specificity on targeting and things like that, that's when the problems set in. We already know that that's been a problem for the U.S. with their targeting of things in Iran. But more than that, just look at Israel's military operations. Look at Gaza. Look at South Lebanon. That's AI. I would, wager to say a lot of that is heavily reliant on artificial intelligence, and it makes sense because people will be able to. This is one of the beauties of AI in the military world of today, where the rules of engagement are being thrown out the window. Is you can sort of defer to the AI. You can say, well, it gave us a 70% confidence rate on that as a viable target. So our policy, our corporate policy, our government policy, corporate, same thing. Our policy is we have to defer to that, and that's our policy. End of discussion. End of discussion. Move on to the next. I mean, that's the world that we're moving into right now, and it's positively frightening.
So you've just come back from Iran to cover the funeral of the Ayatollah. Tell us something about What you learned about the resilience of the Iranian people in this relentless attack now. And do the Americans understand that? Do they have that message? Do they know what they're up against here?
I can't speak for all Americans. I can speak for this American.
Yeah.
And being I would say sticking out like a sore thumb in a sea of angry Iranians. But I was there with them on the streets of Tehran and in Mashhad in the millions. I didn't have any security guards protecting me or anything like that, and I was received with great welcome, a lot of curiosity. Um, a lot of people wanted to know what I was doing there. They wanted to know what I thought about X, Y, and Z. And it was at times there were some challenging conversations when you're dealing with the general public. You don't know who's coming at you, and it's a very emotionally charged situation. Like the funeral of the supreme leader. It's a really intense. That's the best way I can describe it. An intense, emotional thing. And, you know, I can say a lot about, I mean, what Scott said about the religious component is absolutely central to everything. And I really felt I can only give you my superficial interpretation and my limited time I spent. Although I can tell you I've been to the biggest anti-war protests in the world. I've been to Pope state visits. I have been to some of the biggest demonstrations in the world, including some of the biggest ones in Iran previously. Okay, so I have a good, I would say, reference for the scale. Nothing compared to what I had witnessed or experienced. The intensity, the sheer, it's like mourning and the passion, and then you also have to pay attention to the symbolism. There were signs I started noticing everywhere, and in Arabic, Farsi, and in English. And it said, and it had an iconic picture of the leader's hand through the rubble. This is according to his son Mushtaba Khamenei, his successor as leader. That this was the image when they were pulling the deceased leader out of his fist was clenched with his ring, iconic ring, and his tattered robe. And the slogan that was the theme of this week-long funeral was "We must rise." So, and it was in English too. They had it in English as well as Farsi and Arabic. That's very powerful if you think about it. So it wasn't just about looking past and mourning. It was about looking forward. So I started asking a lot of people. I said, "What do you mean we must rise? Who is we, and you know what must rise?" And I got many different answers from that, which is interesting, and this is so typical of this nation of poets, artists, and literary scholars. I could say the same with Iraq and many other Middle Eastern countries as well, Asian countries. But they said that, you know, Iran as a nation must rise as an anti-colonial kind of post-colonial force, as a sovereign nation. Islam must rise. Shia Islam, the message of, as Scott said, the nation of Imam Hussein. The martyr Imam Hussein. That is a central theme that you cannot tease away from any of this. It's absolutely, and that's the other thing is this is one, the religion, the politics, the history, the civilizational state, the morals, the ethics, all of that. It's one package. It's we become so cynical in the West because we have separation of church and state, and we just can't believe that anybody would write into their constitution, that any government in 2026 would write into their constitution that we're going to defend and liberate oppressed people wherever they are in the world. I mean, no matter what religion they are, we look on that with such cynicism, especially as Europeans and Americans. And we just think, oh, they can't be serious. They don't really care about the Palestinian people. They're just anti-Semitic. You know, this is the way we rationalize this. And the fact of the matter is, they do believe in that. And it's like a hive mind there. I cannot describe. I've never seen anything like it. It's like everyone is immediately connected on these issues. And Iranians specifically, and I've been all around the West Asia, this is different there. And they don't need to get like orders from the central office they know when it's time to step up. This is the difference between Iranians and everyone else in the region, is that as a nation, I'm not talking about everyone in the region, but as a nation, there is a level of cohesion and solidarity that has really been amplified because of the U.S. war. So, and another thing I realized after a couple of weeks there in this very intense time was that the Trump administration should take credit. They should pat themselves on the back. They did accomplish something. They thoroughly dismantled any opposition or Western-leaning liberal opposition in Iran themselves through their actions. I mean, so thoroughly. In fact, if they're going to give a trophy out for that, I think Trump needs to get the FIFA director should give him a medal or give him some special award for eliminating the Iranian opposition. Him and Netanyahu have just done that incredibly. But just the resilience is real. They're a resilient. It's a resilient society, and it's a resilient civilization. And the penny has to drop for Americans at some point. Why? How can this be a resilient civilization? 3,000 years? I was reprimanded because I said 3,000 years, and some Iranians said, no, five. See, but they must have some qualities, innate qualities that have allowed them to be a resilient civilization. I mean, does that even come into our calculus in the West? I mean, they actually have inherent qualities as people, as a civilization, and then we need to understand what those are, and we have to respect those, because those have thousands of years behind them. There is a collective sort of cohesion, a mindset, and in the Islamic or the Shia Islamic era, some of these aspects and characteristics have been refined and into this kind of ethical and moral doctrine that you're seeing through the revolutionary government post 1979. This is the government that the people had a referendum and chose for a specific reason. You need to see that. But what we've been given in the West is the diametric opposite of propaganda. And this is the most dehumanized, thoroughly mischaracterized population and country. One of the most, anyway. I don't want to say the most because there's so many, but by the West and the U.S. specifically, everything we've been told, especially their leader. I mean, the Americans, the way he's portrayed by Fox and Jesse Waters of the world and all these sort of very crass U.S. pundits, is that because he has a turban and a beard, he must be a terror mastermind. Ergo, it's okay that we assassinate him and his family. And nothing could be further from the truth. He was a scholar in Western literature, as well as Persian literature, as well as everything else. I saw his book collection. I was in his home in Mashhad, very austere. I mean, it's like something where Gandhi would have lived. It's the basics. But some of his books were still there, and it's Victor Hugo. It's all of the sort of Western classics that we would have to read to get a degree in English literature. He's fluent in all of this. You read his writings on his website. This is a very sensitive, thoughtful philosopher, religious leader, and he was the godfather of the country for 2 generations. And so this is a great loss. And what is the justification for us killing him and his family? There's not even an attempt at some kind of a rationale other than this was the head of the snake and he is the terror mastermind. He's micromanaging Iran's proxies, terror proxies. This Disney level caricaturing of the leader, the country. Nothing positive can come from this, but this is like 24/7, anything related to Iran. I could say the same. We could do an analysis about Russia, same thing. We could talk about how Hezbollah or the Palestinian resistance organizations, I mean, it's a whole nother conversation, but it's along the same lines. When you go on and you witness this, 40 million people took part in this funeral over a week. That's like almost half the population in one way or another took part in this. It's unheard of. It's unheard of. You can't even get 1 million people out in the street for a state funeral in the West in any major country. It's just impossible. They came out 15 million in Tehran, according to the Financial Times. Okay. And I was amongst the middle of it. And I'm going to tell you, and there were a lot of red flags for vengeance. and there's old ladies waving those flags, as well as young people, and a lot of former liberals waving those flags. Okay, so, and the Americans will look at that, Joe, and say, "Oh, look at, they're saying death to America. Oh my gosh, why do they mean us harm?" Well, what did you expect? You killed their pope, and for what? And for who? And you're shocked that people are want to avenge the death of their leader? I mean, Americans are just living in such a incredible imaginary virtual space between in their minds, that they just can't bring them. The government has never said death to America, by the way, the Iranian government. This is what you hear at mosques, some rallies, and so forth. Okay, and you see it on the streets. But do you blame them? Honestly, when they say death to America, they mean the American regime. Okay, clearly they're not wanting to kill all Americans, because nobody showed any aggression towards me at all, and I was literally interfacing with thousands of people myself physically. I was alone at some points with people mourning the death of the leader killed by my government. Okay, and I did not feel threatened at all, at any time. But I was very aware that it's a very emotionally sensitive moment. But I'm telling you, we have underestimated these people, this country, this government, their political system. They have checks and balances. They have a sophisticated civil society. They have institutions. We have grossly underestimated every single aspect of Iran. That's the best thing I can say. I hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears of Americans.
That was excellent. Thank you, Patrick. Yes.
I just throw that. First of all, thank you, Patrick. I mean, if you see green envy on my face, it's because I'm envious of the fact that you got to be in Iran and see that. And I wish more Americans could go to Iran and see what you witnessed. One of the things too, here in the United States, we call ourselves a constitutional republic, but we've abandoned the institution of constitutionality. We function as a cult of personality, as a dictatorship, anything other than a constitutional republic. Iran is a constitutional republic, and one of the reasons why, the what Patrick is talking about, it's 5,000 years of culture that has been institutionalized in the form of an Islamic republic, and the people the Iranians are better Iranian citizens than the Americans are American citizens. The Iranians know their republic, they know the institutions, and they believe in them, they support them. And it's not it's not an Islamic dictatorship. I mean, again, as Patrick said, we look at a turban and we look at a beard and we go, "Oh my God, ignorance." But actually, when I look at a turban and I look at a beard, I say that's 30 or 40 years of some of the most stringent studying, academic studying, religious studying. These fiqh is a term, and fiqh is it's not just about religion; it's the human understanding of faith and how faith guides life. And these guys, the Ayatollahs, they study the Quran, they study the Sunnah, which are basically the teachings and actions and approval of the Prophet Muhammad told through eyewitnesses, stuff called ijma and qiyas. They have to say, this isn't superficial. This isn't like an American getting a PhD in 5 years. That's superficial knowledge. We prove it by everyone walking around with a PhD saying, "I'm a doctorate from whatever university. I'm an expert." You're not an expert. You're nothing. You have superficiality. You cheated. You drank your way through college. Whatever you want to say. These people study. They have to go to a hausa learning. There's a board of religious experts who quiz them the whole time. And then the ultimate test is, I guess you have to form a marja. You have to go out there and you have to write your theory of religion as it applies to life. And you have to convince the people that you're a man that they can come to to see guidance and faith. And if you can't attract a marja, you're not the big boys. You don't get to join the big boy club. Iran is in many ways far more democratic through their religious practices than we are, because it truly is the power of the people that make the Ayatollahs relevant. If the people don't support the Ayatollahs don't get to be Ayatollahs because they don't get to appoint themselves. I mean, this is the amazing thing. And right now, like I said, I have superficial, book learning from afar. Man, I want to go to Iran and just immerse myself in this, because I just think that if I could go there and I could see how they have embraced their constitution, their republic, that there's lessons to be learned about citizenship. We don't need to bring religion, but everybody's like, oh, they got the Guardian Council, they got the Assembly of Experts. Religion is a bar. Money's a bar here in America. You can't do anything in America politically without money. So we have a bar. We've just decided that money, oh, shame on the Iranians for making faith a bar for for higher office. Shame on them for putting standards derived not from superficiality, but a deep understanding of how religion interacts with humanity on a national basis. Are they perfect? Nobody's perfect. But the reason this nation of Iran is standing together, stronger today than they have ever been in the entire history of the Islamic Republic. If we thought we were weakening them, Patrick is an eyewitness to the fact that we aren't. They are stronger, and it's because of their faith. And maybe the American people need to have faith in our Constitution the way they have faith in their religion. We're a nation 250 years old. Yes, we don't have 5,000 years, but you don't need 5,000 years. You just need to believe in who you are. We don't even know who we are in the United States. The Iranians know exactly who they are.
Yeah, and Scott's what's is right. It's more of a bottom up. The supreme leader has a direct connection with the people. That's part of his role, actually. And it's a different system. It's a very unique system, and it kind of works in a way, and it's efficient in a certain way, because they have the same consensus building pools of institutions and people and politics that we have. Our consensus building system. Russia has a certain consensus building system. Russia has a massive national security, civil society, and vertical institutions, plus all sorts of other institutions, that creates this giant consensus pool that distills down complicated ideas and that become votes for policy. Iran has this as well, but the people are more engaged in the democratic process in Iran, I would argue, than Americans are in their own system, or that Europeans are, definitely more than Europeans, and British. Because the leadership are very concerned with the way the people are feeling and thinking on all of these main issues. And the debate is rigorous, and it's nuanced, and it's detail oriented. The Iranians are tireless analysts and political debaters. They have unlimited energy. There's no exhaustion threshold on this for Iranians. So that, in a certain way, and they do have opposition there, and things do get heated. And I would argue that's a sign. Those are signs of a healthy democratic environment. Personally, I don't want to say system. I'll just say environment, ecosystem. So we think that there's no consensus building there, that it's top down. It's not. It's absolutely the other way around.
And I just also say this, that we are prisoners here in America of our own prejudices, and that we have built an image of the Middle East or West Asia that is Gulf Arab centric. The Gulf Arabs are the most fake people in the world. They're fake nations with fake leaders. They were put in place by the British to maintain neo-colonial continuity of control. The United States has moved in, but there's nothing real about Saudi Arabia. There's nothing real about the United Arab Emirates. There's nothing real about Bahrain or Kuwait. There was something real about Syria. I mean, one of the great tragedies of the fall of Assad isn't the fall of Assad; it's the collapse of the Syrian nation, which is a nation that had potential to be the Arab equivalent of Iran. Nasser tried to bring it in Egypt. We crushed that. Saddam tried to bring it in Iraq. We crushed that. In Syria, the Damascus, Aleppo centers of culture are as rich and deep and vibrant as the things that exist in Iran, but we destroyed it by letting this head chopping fanatic named Jolani come in and roll over it. But our prejudices, we call them ragheads, we call them sand inwards, we call them a whole bunch of stuff. And this is applied to our ignorance of Gulf Arabs and Arabs in general. And then we try to take this prejudice, hate-filled vitriol, and we apply it to the Iranians. You know, even if we were accurate about the Arabs, and we're not accurate about them at all. There is no comparison between the Arab world, especially the Gulf Arab centricity that dominates our thinking, and Iran today. Iran is a completely different universe, populated by a completely different culture, a completely different approach to life, it's totally different. And yet the people that are making policies today are the ignorant supporters of Zionism who think that there's Gaza is Tehran. It's not. And then they get into superficial connectivities between Hezbollah and Iran without understanding the complicated history that exists there. But the ignorance, that's the thing I'm trying to point out, is that we just don't understand Iran because we don't have the skill set to understand Iran, but we also have corrupted our potential by saying one raghead is the same as the next raghead. I mean, I'm just being overly simple, but you get people like Sarah Adams who are former CIA analyst who made her name in Benghazi and now has just been spreading Islamophobia throughout the United States. Laura Loomer is in addition to her recent conversion to Zelensky, she's just spreading Islamophobia. These are people who don't even know what Islam is. I mean, they can barely spell Islam, but they don't know anything about the cultures they're talking about, the religion itself, and they're just spewing hatred, hatred, hatred. And this is why Iran's going to win, because they're better than we are. They're better people than we are. They're a better culture than we are. They're a better society than we are because they're true to their beliefs. They're true to their beliefs, and they and until we learn to respect that, we're never going to be able to defeat them, and I don't want us to defeat them. But more importantly, we're never going to be able to live in peace and harmony with them. Because to live in peace and harmony, you actually have to view people as humans and have a total understanding of who they are, what they believe in. It doesn't mean that becomes your belief system. It means that you respect their belief system for them. And we have to learn to respect the Iranian people. We have to learn to respect everybody. But especially right now, Iran, the harm we're doing to that nation, the physical harm and the emotional harm. I was in Starobilsk, and the 21 dead, so the harm done to those families, and that it's real. I mean, you talk to the people who have buried children and buried loved ones, and in the West, we have our tragedies where we bury people. We have murdered tens of thousands of Iranians in this war. Murdered tens of thousands of Iranians, most of them innocent civilians. And yet we Americans walk around and think it's insignificant because they're not really humans, are they? They're Muslims. They're ragheads. They believe what some of the things, they're savages. To call the Iranian people savages, I mean, my God, you couldn't be more wrong. These are some of the most noble, cultured people in the world. They're not savages. And we call them this. The fact that these people didn't rip you apart, Patrick, because of where you come from, is a testimony to who they are as human beings. And I wish we could be that. Because look what we did to Muslims after 9/11. Hell, look what we did. The ignorance, what we did to Sikhs after 9/11. They have a turban. They must be Islamic. Um, the ignorance that's manifested in everything about the United States is that which is going to ultimately destroy us if we don't turn it around. And one of the first things we have to do to turn around is we have to learn to love the Iranian people, and we have to learn to love the Russian people. And now we have this wave of communism going, anti-communism. We have to learn to love the Cuban people. We have to learn to love the Chinese people. We have to learn to love humanity. This country, this country of mine, country of ours, is so full of hate right now. And hate is the thing that triggers hate is fear, and the thing that triggers fear is ignorance. We have a duty and responsibility to become informed about the world we live in. And if we would do this, the world would be a much better place. And Patrick, I hope you can find a way to capture your experience in Iran and bring it to the American people to let the American people know what you saw there, so that we can begin that process of undermining the hatred that the Trump administration is seeking to use to control us all.
Yeah. No, I'm sharing as much as I can on podcast platforms, but if I do too good of a job of that, Scott, then I'll immediately be accused of being a regime propagandist. That's just that's just goes without saying these days, right? But one thing I will share, though, if you Joe and Scott want to dial this into policy and what's going on there, I learned very quickly after a couple of press conferences and media opportunities with their foreign ministers and so forth. They've given up. They've said on record, our policy is we have zero expectation that the U.S. will ever abide by or any of its obligations of any of these agreements. So that's what they're saying publicly. But the conversation in America is that the MOU is a working document, and we're oscillating back and forth with the Iranians. And the Iranian conversation is, no, you guys are staging provocations in the Strait of Hormuz to create a pretext to escalate militarily against us, to hit targets, to degrade our ability to manage the strait physically with infrastructure, radar, naval base, and so forth. They know exactly what the U.S. is doing. And, Scott probably knows more about this than I do, but it's pretty clear that the Department of Defense or Department of War, I don't even want to give it the legitimacy of calling it the Department of War, because it's just so it's barbaric, quite frankly. But anyway, they've already been funded for operations, a certain amount of operations. They have things to do. They have planned operations. This is one of those strategies. The window is 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever, the end of Trump's term, let's just say. Whether those are successful or not is another discussion, but they're going to get on with operations. And the U.S. has strategy. It might not work. It might not make any sense, but they're going to continue because they have to go and basically justify the amount of money they're spending. And so the Iranians are fully aware of all of this. And the conversation in America is everyone's kind of deluded, thinking that that's not really the case. No, we're doing this and doing that. They think that nobody else in the world knows that they're completely full of it. But the Iranians understand everything. That's the thing. And it's very public there. So this conversation that we're having might seem enlightened in comparison to Western mainstream media commentary on this. But I can tell you right now, this would not be out of place in Iranian broadcasting, mainstream. The conversations that we're having are just about the reality of what's happening in the Strait, what U.S. real intentions are, what the likelihood of these operations being successful from an American point of view. None of that is lost on the Iranians, I can tell you right now.
Patrick, you're 100% right. The military works on mission statements, and mission statements are tied to funding. And you don't turn them off without commander-in-chief authority. So everything's on full automatic. As a commander, if I went to Bahrain and was given, command of task force, 172.65, whatever, making up a number here. But my job was to monitor Iranian fishing fleet activity and commercial dhows, and and interview the fishermen and try to recruit people for this, that, and the other thing. That mission doesn't end until I'm ordered to stop it. So all of the missions, and whatever mission they've been given, the mission continues until you're ordered to stop it. As a commander, you're not allowed to stop on your own volition. You're not allowed to wake up in the morning and go, "Ah, God, I think we're failing in Iran. Therefore, I'm not going to do my mission anymore." You've been given a mission, you will accomplish the mission, and you will keep going until you are ordered to stop, or the money runs out. And sometimes, even when the money runs out, you're told to, adapt. Um, we have not changed our underlying policy. That's the other thing. People need to be careful about Trump waking up and going, "Oh my God," uh, until he issues the orders to terminate operations, to shut it down, to close up shop, to come home. But he can't do that because every one of these operations is linked to a national security strategy, a defense strategy. So you have to do a fundamental rethink of how you want America to operate in the world, in West Asia, et cetera. And that's not happening right now. That's not happening. And so anybody who thinks, I mean, anybody, "Oh, we've lost the war, therefore America's going to leave the Middle East." No, it isn't going to happen. The military, it's like the beast that can never die. You cut off the head, it's going to come back because the mission still is there. And the military will never stop implementing the mission until they're ordered to stop implementing, or until Congress cuts the money off. And even then, as I said, they will feed additional money in. The military, it just operates that way. And so does the CIA. That's the other thing. The CIA is even worse because a lot of remember, the CIA, the way it was created was to be covert, to avoid scrutiny from the United States Congress, strictly. And so the CIA has things happening that will never stop happening until the CIA itself disappears, and then it will morph into something different. It's more dangerous than the Ministry of War, the Department of Defense. But you're 100% right. None of this changes until we get a fundamental rethink of how we're going to deal with the Middle East. Trump getting beat or Trump waking up changes nothing, because the mission will continue.
And also, Scott, the U.S. policies and outcomes are sometimes running on 4-year cycles, according to the administration. The Iranians' attitude, it's very clear, and I heard this from many different people, that they view this as a war of attrition, and they're prepared for the long haul, because to them, to evict U.S. influence or U.S. military dominance in the Persian Gulf and the region, they want to get it done. That's a job they just want to get done, no matter how long it takes. And so they're not going to be swayed by threats or intimidation or coercion or sanctions or anything like that. They're like, "No, and go ahead, send in the 82nd Airborne." They're like, "Yeah, we're waiting. We want to get this over with." So that's their attitude, and they're not afraid to die for that cause. And the U.S. would need to mobilize a lot of soldiers and a lot of people, and they're not going to go into that endeavor with the same attitude that the Iranians have no problem mobilizing people right now. So they've filled their ranks. They're probably having trouble processing recruits for Basij, for their national military divisions, as well as the IRGC. So they have no problem mobilizing right now. So, and their ground forces, and Scott may know more about this than most, but that is one of their most competent departments of their entire military, are their ground forces. And we don't know that. And we don't hear much about that, but they've been busy. They've been doing things in the recent weeks in Iraqi Kurdistan, for instance. And I would wager, and I'm not one to know how good Delta Force is, and I'm sure the U.S. have great special forces, no doubt about that, best in the world for mission specific. But I would say Iran has pretty competent and pretty capable special forces and deployment divisions and battalions and so forth. And they have a lot of history fighting wars on their territory as well. So, I mean, we need to consider all these things when you're talking about a war of attrition. Who are you going to wager is going to be more successful at the end of that? I would not bet on the U.S. and this current administration or the way that we're looking at this conflict from the U.S. or Western perspective. I would not bet on that. I don't think the success probability is high.
Delta Force and the Rangers in 1993 October went into Mogadishu against strung out um, militants, and they got their asses handed to them. Called Black Hawk Down. People have seen the movie, read the book. Delta Force soldiers are good. I've served with them. I have great respect for them. A bullet in the brain kills them just like it kills everybody else. A bullet in the gut spills their guts. A bullet in the leg breaks their bones. They die. They're not immortal. And there's not that many of them. The Iranians have some of the finest fighting forces the world has ever seen. Some of their forces are, as proficient in what they do as Delta is in what they do. The idea that we're going to send in a JSOC, raid to accomplish mission X. No, because we won't be going up against, the second grade. This isn't, ID's cot chewing fanatics. We'll be going up against hardcore professionals who will slaughter us in the streets. This is what we need to understand. We need to treat them with the utmost respect. These are just hardcore fighters. They're very good. They train very hard. They have great technology, great equipment. And if we think we're just going to waltz in there and push them over because they're just a bunch of ragheads, that just guarantees we will die in even greater numbers. I have great respect for my fellow Marines. I have great respect for the men and women in the Army and the Air Force. But if they don't respect their enemy, they're going to get beat very, very badly. And the Iranians are very, very good.
And the other question is, what are you fighting for? What is the reason? How do you define victory? Those things don't seem to matter under this current president and the general attitude and this kind of cocksure Pete Hegseth style, Team America style approach. There's no talk about how you define victory. What is the political outcome? Is there a political settlement? Nobody. There's so much disinterest in this, and that is everything actually. And as Scott kind of alluded to at the beginning, is the best victory you could hope for in some cases is not to go to war or not to pick a fight with the wrong opponent. And that's a legitimate option. You could count that as a win in history. But all of these concepts seem to be completely out the window right now with the current U.S. administration, which really has a lot of people worried. A lot of people who are still considerate and thoughtful worried, I would think. But that's the thing that scares me the most.
I mean, just to build on what you just said, I mean, if you just think about it, Trump is caught in this escalation trap. I mean, we're not going to win this fight. There's literally no outcome in which we win. Even if we use nuclear weapons, we're not going to win. The fact that we would use nuclear weapons is an automatic loss, because it hopefully it never gets to that. But the best possible outcome we could have ever had was to negotiate to bring the negotiation that we had finalized on February 28th, where an Omani delegation was flying to Washington, D.C. That would have given Donald Trump the better nuclear deal than the JCPOA. And we wouldn't have any of these problems. None of these problems. We'd still have a military presence in the Gulf. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that's not a defeat for America. We wouldn't have dead Americans. We'd have tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars worth of infrastructure still in place. We'd still have the perception of American military deterrent value. Today, we've lost. People have to understand what the damage that's been done to the reputation of the United States globally. Do you understand that the Japanese and South Koreans don't trust us anymore? Because we created this tripartite alliance against North Korea that was predicated on America always being there with its missile defense shield. And then we went in and yanked out THAAD and Patriot 3 batteries without even coordinating with them. And the Japanese, we told them we're going to give you 400 Tomahawks so you have an independent counter-strike capability. Now we said you're not getting any Tomahawks. And they're going, wait a minute, what? Welcome to the day and age of being an American ally, where there's no such thing as an American ally anymore. We've proven that we exist for only the United States and only Israel. Everybody else is way, way down and can be abandoned at any moment. This is a whole new reality that's emerged from this Iranian conflict. The Iranian conflict isn't just about the collapse of America in West Asia. It's about the global collapse of America because we've been exposed as being a military power incapable. When I was in, we were supposed to fight and win 2.5 wars. I remember that, man. We were ready to win 2.5 wars. We could beat you in Europe, we could beat you in Asia, and we'd do a holding action in the Middle East until we brought forces from one of our victories in, and we'd won, and we could do it. We were ready to do it. Today, we can't win one war. America can't fight one war anywhere in the world because we were always based upon bluffing our way through. F-35, F-22, F-18, aircraft carriers, all this stuff. And everybody's supposed to go, oh no, an American carrier is parked off our coast, surrender. And, boom. Iran's proven you can park all the carriers you want off there. You're going to be way the hell out in the ocean because we have missiles that can sink you. And if you get too close, then you're going to maneuver hard and throw an F-18 off board because, you can't launch. It's over. This is the whole point. It's over. There's not a single, this is why I get back to Cuba. If they fight, we can't beat them. There's not a single nation in the world that we can beat if they fight. That's just a statement of outright fact. We don't have the military to do it. And now that drone warfare is becoming more prevalent, look at Israel. They went into Lebanon and they just got the snot slammed out of them by Hezbollah drones. And I was speaking with Russian drone operators who were evaluating the quality of the Hezbollah operation. You could tell, by the video feed, how good the pilot is. And so they were saying, early on the Hezbollah guys were like rookies, making rookie mistakes. But then later on, you see the fluidity, the way the drone comes in, the way it approaches, and Hezbollah is getting better and better and better and better at what they're doing. That's why the Israelis can't advance at all. Because of drones. Around the world, people are going to be picking up this. So whatever technological advantages we might have had, with a heavy armored brigade, the Iranians have heavy armored brigades. Do you know how quick an American heavy armored brigade would die if it went into Iran? It wouldn't last 3 days. It just wouldn't last 3 days. And that's just, and then we have no reserves to pick up. That's the other thing. War is expensive. War is hard. Everybody's mocking the Russians. They're not advancing fast. Well, I'll tell you what, they got 700,000+ men on the ground advancing in one of the most heavily fortified places on earth against an army that's bigger than them, and they're winning. We can't get 700,000 guys anywhere. Find it. We couldn't do Desert Storm today. We don't have enough troops. We don't have enough troops. We got nothing. Literally nothing. And the airplanes that are supposed to be the winning, we're out of ammunition. And they've never gone up against a real air defense. So Donald Trump has destroyed American credibility, not just in terms of moral authority, but military. We used to be able to at least walk in and go, hey, and people go, oh, we don't want to piss off America. They're tough guys in the room. Now we come and go, hey, and they go, shut up, sit down. We don't care about you. You're nothing. What are you going to do? Bomb us? Okay. We know you can't bomb. Hell, we can't bomb Iran into submission. Think about that. We can't bomb Iran into submission. And we think we can handle Russia. We think we can handle China. We think we can handle North Korea. We are just an absolute hollow shell of a nation militarily, and it's going to bankrupt us. And they're already talking 1.5 trillion. Let me give the American people a clue here. Why spending more money isn't going to help. Our system is so fundamentally broken that no amount of money can fix it. We have to learn from the Germans. Their military was so fundamentally broken that when Olaf Scholz said, "Give me 100 billion euro so I could quick fix our military," and he got it from the German parliament last year, they went, "How'd that work?" It disappeared. They said, "Well, how did we get any better?" Nope, we got worse. See, it's so bad that even when you put more money into it, all you do is perpetuate the things that made it fail to begin with. If you pour money into a broken system, you're just going to have the system continue to break itself. And that's why it's wrong for America to say, here's 1.5 trillion and we'll fix it. No, 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 no. Wake up, America. We need to start from the bottom. We need to change everything about what we do. And the first thing we have to do is understand that our military cannot be about global conquest anymore. Our military must be about legitimate national security interests, governed by the notion that while American servicemen and women are ready to fight and die for their country, it is the duty and responsibility of every American politician to ensure that we never ask them to fight and die unless it's a cause worthy of that sacrifice, and we lead with diplomacy, not lead with the military. But anyways, enough philosophy.
I would add to what Scott said about our allies like Japan and South Korea and all the Gulf GCC countries. It's worse than not having an ally from their point of view when looking at the U.S. It's that Trump and this whole situation has more than anything, and it probably the Ukraine proxy war against NATO's proxy war against Russia and Ukraine has also unmasked this reality, is that, but especially the Persian Gulf and the GCC countries and in East Asia, that the U.S. is running a protection racket. And really, that's kind of what it is. And when the protection racket has broken down, all they have is targets painted on them, potentially, all these client countries. And then Trump's just very open about it, though. He's just like, you got to pay us now. You got to pay us more now, sort of. It's like, it's so fitting that we got a New York City president who's pretty much doing the modern geopolitical equivalent of breaking windows and then showing up with the boys afterwards, just like Tony Soprano. Hey, look, it's a dangerous neighborhood. And that's kind of like what it is. The only difference between Saudi and the Israelis is Saudi has to pay. It's the same. They get the same, more or less, the full military gear, all U.S. technical support, all sorts of logistical support, staffing, ammunition, maybe F-35s, full complement, all U.S. top of the range. But Saudi pays, Israel doesn't pay. But all these Arab countries, that's all they've been really good for the U.S. is that they pay. And that's why they're happy. The U.S. regards them as good clients because they pay. But now the whole facade of this has been shattered by Iran. But I think it's also for Europe. I think that realization should have come earlier. Maybe they're a little bit slow in some cases, but certainly Central European countries are realizing this right now.
God, you mentioned Giuliani. It's interesting that while Rubio and the others were talking about left-wing terrorists, they invited Giuliani to the White House. And you, Patrick, asked for who? Who did they kill the Ayatollah for? Mr. Netanyahu is headed to the White House again on Tuesday. Scott, where do they go from here? They've lost this war 3 times now, it seems like. What are they going to do next?
Lose another war. I mean, Joe, this is a hard question to answer because, in order to answer this question in a non-superficial way, I'm going to end up sounding like an anti-Semite because Netanyahu is back. The horrific policies he's implemented. Normally one would say that Israel is on the verge of collapse. Netanyahu is not going to win the next election, but who's going to replace him? What kind of coalition is going to replace him, and how do they sustain it? Israel's become an entity that can only be sustained by violence. Israel cannot coexist with the region peacefully because Israel's become this parasitic cancer. so it has to consume the host. It's incapable of living in harmony with the host. And Israel can't stand by itself. It literally cannot function by itself. It has to be backed by the United States, backed by a global Zionistic presence, and it needs to feed off violence to sustain its legitimacy. So one would normally think that it's going to collapse, but the reality is the Zionism controls America. Like, I mean, hell, we just I don't know if it's passed the Senate yet, but didn't the House just pass that the NDA that sort of makes the Israeli
Yes.
military the American military? I mean, so basically we've now morphed ourselves into the host has decided that the parasite's going to take over the host. That's what we just did. We said, screw it, open up, come in. We are now Israel. And so how do you defeat Israel when America is now Israel? Israel is actually morphed into America, taken over America. I mean, we have to cleanse ourselves. America has to cleanse ourselves. But how do you do that without looking, sounding, acting like an anti-Semite? I mean, that's the thing, the power of ideas here. We've allowed the Jewish faith to be hijacked by Zionism. And so, the second you say, I don't want to support this, oh, you're anti-Jewish. No, I'm not anti-Jewish. I'm just anti what this murderous policy is. I think Netanyahu's, if the United States continues to head in this direction, um, the greater Israeli experiment's going to survive for a long time. I was hoping that they were on their way out. But in order for them to be on the way out, they had to be isolated from the United States. And I thought that was happening. I thought, we were looking at the student movement in the campus. We're looking at a solidification of Americans saying that 60% of Americans don't support this. But again, the will of the people doesn't matter when the institution has been corrupted to the extent that a cult of personality governs, not an executive linked to a constitution. The United States now has allowed Israel to come into the very thing that preserves our security, the military, the intelligence services. They're now going to control the data that is used to attack people like Patrick and myself and you, Joe. I mean, this is the fact. This is it's a game-changing moment. What's happening now? It's a game-changing moment that means that we will have forever wars in the Middle East. And again, we come back to why this would be. And I talked about it earlier because the United States cannot continue to hold a dominant position in the world if we have to exist as co-equals in the world, abiding by a singularity of law, a singularity of vision. We will lose that one. We are an inferior country right now. We're inferior economically, militarily, politically. We're inferior culturally. We're inferior in terms of messaging because we stand for nothing. So we still have enough strength in the amalgam of the totality of America, though, that we can be relevant if we create chaos and manage the chaos. And I think right now, Israel has become a tool of chaos that will be managed by the United States, or Israel will use the United States to manage the chaos. I'm not quite sure what the relationship is right now, who's controlling whom, but it doesn't matter. The parasite has taken over the host, and its goal isn't to create peace and stability. Its goal is to create chaos and anarchy, because that's the only way that the United States remains relevant in the world today, by generating chaos and then serving as an agent to manage and influence the chaos, to push the chaos. So that's, I think, where we are. I'm sickened by it, and I know that these words are probably going to have FBI agents kicking down my door sometime in the future, but so be it.
Well, I'm going to add to what Scott's saying and maybe get Scott's comment to see if he has noticed what I've noticed over the last 2 years is a change in rhetoric from this administration and its officials that mirrors Israeli language when it comes to dealing with war, when it comes to, we used to have restraint and proportionality, reciprocity. And we just had a statement from Marco Rubio, who told reporters this week, the president's approach to war is, quote, a head for an eye. So it's even more than an eye for an eye. So it's like one of ours, 100 of yours. That's an Israeli maxim. Rise and kill first. It's a motto of the IDF, of Mossad. So we're adopting, the Trump administration during this period is adopting Israeli rhetoric when it comes to these types of situations. That this to me, and I've been watching U.S. politics my whole life. You know, I grew up with U.S. politics, and I've never seen this language before. Only recently, official language. So I don't know if Scott, you've noticed the same thing, but I'm kind of shocked by it, and it's hard. It's a hard thing to accept as an American, if you consider all of the people that came before this in those same positions. But have you noticed this, Scott?
100%. I mean, this is what I'm saying. The parasite is taking over the host. I wrote an article a little more than a year ago, which I linked. I basically called Israel a parasite. I compared them to be, I think, the green wasp that injects itself into the American cockroach and takes over the body. But that's what's happened now. And so what we're seeing is now they have taken over our cortex. They are into our brain, and we are speaking like them. We're using their words. This is the most un-American thing possible. Again, for all the ignorant American people out there that think it's cool to say, rise up and strike first. Yeah, that's great. You understand how un-American this is. You understand that the United States is a nation defined by a body of law, the Constitution, that we are a nation built on the rule of law. You understand that the rule of law, because of the way the Constitution is written, when the president signed a treaty ratified by two-thirds of the United States Senate, that becomes the supreme law of the land, that the United Nations Charter is the supreme law of the land. It's not an inconvenient thing to be embraced when it's okay for us and ignored. It is the law, supreme law. We don't go to war willy-nilly. But this administration is talking like the Israelis. It's become Greater Israel. The Greater Israeli Project, everybody was talking about how it's expanding into the Middle East. No, we missed it. We blew it. The Greater Israeli Project expanded into America and has now hijacked the United States. We are the Greater Israeli Project. We have become the Greater Israeli Project, and it's manifested in the policies and the rhetoric of this administration. And the sad thing is, nobody in Congress is standing up. This is a bipartisan surrender of the takeover of Israel of our country. It sickens me. I mean, Patrick, I apologize because I don't know your background. I don't know if you put any time in the military, and it's not a litmus test of anything. But if you
They tried to recruit me, Scott. They tried to recruit me. I was a good athlete in high school, but unsuccessfully.
We should have got you. No, I'm glad you didn't go. But the
The
point
Marines
is,
came. The Marines came first.
of course,
Yeah,
because we want good
but
athletes.
yeah, I was an NC2A swimmer, so but yeah, so I didn't opt in. So
No, but in just as well. But because then you'd be sick like I am. Because, I bought into it. I mean, I bought into the whole thing. I took the oath. I love the Marine Corps. I mean, I worship the Marine Corps. It's in my system. It's in my blood. But it was all about service to nation, and the nation is defined by the Constitution. When we spoke about America, that's what America was. And now to see that people are putting on the uniform and putting the flag on their shoulder, but we're serving Israel. It's beyond sickening to me. This is absolutely demoralizing. And I would hope that anybody who is serving in the military today understands what's happened here. That it's an insult to everything you claim you stand for. When you say, I am ready to die for my country, lay my life down for my country. Congress just said, well, no, you're going to die for Israel. You're the same as Israel. It's the same. You're one and the same. No, it's not. It's not the same. America is different. And the other thing is, this, as you said, America should always have been tempered. And the thing about America is that we're late to it, but we acknowledge mistakes. I mean, Vietnam, I think today there's a general consensus that was a mistake. A lot of the things we've done, that was a mistake. But now because that we have a moral conscience that's attached to ideals and values that are in the Constitution. But now we're adapting this Israeli approach where murder is acceptable, where the absolute denigration, this is where we come back full circle to where this show started, Joe. You you have to understand that the people coming after the left-wing liberals now, this isn't American justice misguided. This is Israeli justice. This is the Israeli approach. When they come after us today, it's not going to be about the National Security Division of the FBI perverting the Constitution. It's going to be this morphed thing, this Zionist hate-filled murder racket that's going to come after anybody who is opposed to it. That's the danger here. The Constitution has lost all value now because what we're doing is legitimizing the language of hate, legitimizing the language of murder, legitimizing the language of torture. This will be adapted by the tools used by the executive branch to silence American voices of opposition. And this is what people need to understand, that this infection, this parasite that has taken over isn't just about foreign policy. It's about domestic policy. And once it silences the anti-Israeli voices, it'll silence the anti-every voice. I'll be silenced. You'll be silenced. We'll all be silenced.
Yeah. And the misuse of the overuse of the term terrorism or terrorist and just slapping this label on everything. I will argue that that's a central problem in the Middle East. That is the central problem, I will argue, and specifically in Lebanon and in Palestine as an example. And that's created all sorts of impediments, roadblocks, and made diplomacy impossible and given carte blanche for unlimited collateral damage. Look at Rafah, look at South Lebanon now, and it's all because of that. That's the bypass of international law, human rights, and norms. Is that, and this is why it's, I think, out of control. Personally, I think this is a problem that needs to be reined in. It is this label that is just being used for pretty much everything, and it's, as you say, Scott, it's not going to end with, quote, proscribed militant groups. It's just that extends to pretty much anybody that's opposing the agenda or even just opposing a narrative is enough to get you labeled.
The Ukrainians successfully labeled me. When I say successfully, meaning legislation was passed with American funding, an information terrorist. And the interesting thing is they have committed to why. And there were three main allegations. I know two of them because I can't remember the third one. But the first one was that that Bucha was a that I claimed that Bucha was a Ukrainian security services thing. Well, it was. Everybody knows it. There's no debating this point today. The participants have been found guilty at trial. So boom. The second was that I dared say that the conflict was a proxy conflict between the West and Russia. That Ukraine was just the proxy of this. The funny thing is, I think in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks after they condemned me to death for this. Literally, it was condemning me to death. It was a death sentence that they passed on me. The defense minister of Ukraine came out and said, it's a proxy war between NATO and Russia. So, the stupidity of this, but this is the danger of the term terrorist. And especially when it's applied to information terrorist, because when you live in the United States, free speech is free speech. And yet what they're doing is they're turning free speech into, opposition speech, and opposition then becomes terroristic in nature. And now, boom. So you're 100% correct. The misuse of the term terror. Look, I'm not going to sit. I used to think that Hamas was terrorist. When I was traveling to Israel extensively between 1994 and 1998, every time I went there, something bad happened from Hamas, and it was an act of terrorism. There's no doubt about it. But Israel was born on the back of terrorists, Yitzhak Rabin, and people of that nature. The United States was born. Every one of our founding fathers, Sam Adams and everybody else, was a terrorist in the eyes of the British. So we have to be careful about the use of terrorism, especially if we're looking to resolve problems.
Yes.
Hezbollah has been called terrorist, but when you actually understand Hezbollah, and look at the growth of Hezbollah from a militant movement to a political party and how it successfully integrated itself into Lebanese society. And the fact that today in Lebanon, a significant proportion of the Lebanese people look upon Hezbollah positively because they see the contributions that Hezbollah makes to the reality of Lebanese society, and yet we call them terrorists. We denigrate everything that Hezbollah has done. The same thing, we denigrate Hamas and the linkage they have with the people of Gaza. It's a bad word. It's a stupid word. We've overused it, and now Israel's come in and hijacked it even further. So I think you were extraordinarily. It was very good of you to bring up that linkage. I like it. I'm gonna run with it at some point in time, Patrick. I'm stealing your thunder.
No, please do. I'm spending a lot of time doing more of this because they're also wanting to make the IRGC, which is a division of the Iranian military, into a proscribed terrorist organization. I think the U.S. might have already done that. I'm not sure, but Europe's done, the EU's done it, and the UK government have done a version of it. But what this is ultimately is a diplomacy killer. It means there's going to be no dialogue. So then it's just fight, kill, kill, and that's it. And that it's assuming the other side can't be reasoned with, can't be spoken to. There can be no middle ground reached. There's no debate, no discussion, nothing, and that's it. And it's just like war, basically, and using the instruments of the state to suppress or put down the terrorist threat, as it were. And that's the problem. In fact, look at the MOU with the U.S. and Iran. Clause 1, it's Lebanon. Why is Israel in Lebanon? The justification is they're fighting the war on terror. And so that's it. All the UN Security Council resolutions in the bin. The whole volume of international precedent law in the bin. And so I think this is the main impediment, actually. This is it. And it's kind of like staring us in the face as humanity right now. And look at what we're willing to wager against this. World War III, the end of humanity, to protect this designation? That's really designed it's an anti-diplomacy tool at the moment. So I think it is worth bringing into the debate. And of course, we have to be careful, because if we speak positively or be seen to show support of or encourage a, quote, prescribed organization in a country that legally has designated them as a terrorist organization, then you can end up in jail. And the UK is a perfect example of that with Palestine Action. So it's a hostile environment as a pundit or a journalist to even bring up this issue. So, but so you have to do it obviously responsibly, depending on where you are, just to be realistic about it. But let's not kid ourselves. This is a central problem. It's a central problem, I think. And Scott, and Joe, it's not as if it's impossible to deproscribe organizations. I'll start with the PLO. Okay, PLO is the main office of the Palestinian state or authority, would recognize Palestinian state. Let's talk about the ANC in South Africa, ruling party for many years in South Africa. Let's even go crazy. The MEK, the Mujahideen al-Kek, was deproscribed by Hillary Clinton and others. That was for maybe not so good reasons, to create money flows into the pockets of U.S. Congressmen and senators and people like John Bolton and Rudy Giuliani and so forth, so they could make some extra income. But that aside,
Al-Qaeda was deproscribed.
Well, yeah, that's the big one.
Yeah, that's the big one. Al-Qaeda was
the big one. So it's not as if, Scott, it can't be done. It can be done. Just has to be some political inertia behind it.
The first time I heard the language that made me think that the U.S. was becoming like Israel, or the Israelization of the United States, was right after 9/11, Bush's talk about going in Afghanistan. I said, they're looking at the world in this open-ended anti-terrorist attack. It's completely what Israel's been doing, and it's gone so far since then, so much worse. When Netanyahu did that 60 Minutes interview maybe 2 months ago or 6 weeks ago, when he said, we're not going to take U.S. money anymore within 10 years. Scott and I discussed that on an earlier show, and we said that the UAE would probably be one of the replacements for that. But little did I understand then that he meant the IDF would be merged into the Pentagon. So that there's not going to have to be U.S. money funding Israel. It's going to be part of the Pentagon budget, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, and the income for Israel will be substantial.
That's how they're going to solve that problem.
And licensing technology, all this other stuff. It's
So
endless.
just the practical issue now of what would Trump have to go back to an MOU, the same one or a new one now? How are they going to go forward with this when they realize they cannot win this war? But Netanyahu needs the war to continue to go on. He's going to go and press him. Now, Israel's been on the sidelines, Scott. Are they going to stay there, or are they going to enter the war now if the U.S. wants to back off?
I think Israel will stay on the sideline as long as possible. Again, we need to remember why the 39-day war came to an end. It came to an end because the United States lost the capacity to operate effectively against Iran, and Israel lost the capacity to defend itself. The Iranians were hitting a range of targets near the end of the 39-day war. Targets, things were going boom inside Israel that to the average onlooker, first of all, the Israelis did a good job of shutting down coverage of where missiles were hitting, but places were blowing up that were extraordinarily sensitive to the Israelis, dealing with their intelligence, their national security infrastructure, places that were top secret, and they were blowing up. Now, the Israelis could write it off saying they struck an apartment building, they struck a hospital, they struck this, but the Israelis knew what the Iranians struck, which means that the Israelis were aware of two things. The Iranians knew almost everything there was to know about Israel's national security and how it was, what the infrastructure was, and that Iran could strike it with impunity, and that there was nothing Israel could do to defend itself. And if this conflict had continued to go on, Israel would have taken very big hits, and this is why they begged for the cessation of conflict. Israel knows this today. Israel has not improved its air defense. They've received more missiles, et cetera. But the bottom line is the Iranians have the ability to replicate exactly the same scenario that they successfully implemented the first go around. There's nothing Israel can do ultimately to prevent Iran from hitting all the targets it wants to hit inside Israel. And so Israel doesn't want to go. And there's a lot of bluffing, a lot of talk that we'll do this, that, and the other thing. But Israel does not want this war to go on, and the United States doesn't want it to go on because we can't defend Israel. And so I think Israel is more than happy to let the United States commit suicide on its behalf, which is exactly what we're doing.
Well,
Yep.
all right, I want to do a quick. Yes, go on.
I would second what Scott said. Israel doesn't care whether a MAGA administration's in or a Democrat administration. They don't care. The U.S. economy hits the wall. They don't care. And so they'll let the U.S. bleed out economically, politically. And you know what the next election cycle is going to be? I can just hear the debate stage on the Republican and the Democrat. Well, we think Trump has not managed this war very well in Iran. Well, we need to do all we can to arm Israel and give everything they need to defend themselves, and maybe just manage this slightly differently. And I can kind of project what 2028 will end up being like. But for Iran, it will be a force majeure, probably. They're just going to move, and the region's going to move. And I think the U.S. Options are just going to be less and less in the region over time. And if it's a war of attrition, I just cannot see the U.S. Coming out in a better place. In fact, they've already lost a tremendous amount. So, but it'll be, I think the trick in American politics will be to package this loss as either a win or some kind of better distraction can emerge to take the public away while they sweep up the mess behind them. That's probably what's coming.
But Patrick, there's one thing I think you're going to see in the next election. Correct me if I'm wrong on this one, though. My first trip upon being elected will be to go to Israel. That seems to be the game-winning formula. My first trip.
That'll get you a big fat check in your campaign coffers.
That used to
Mom
be
Duffy was able to avoid that, but
that used to be the first trip of a New York City mayor when he was elected until Mondami came along. I went to Israel for some reason. I want to transition, and I have a perfect way to transition to Ukraine. This little tidbit here. Quoting from the New York Times, President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Saturday that Ukraine struck a cargo vessel moving military supplies between Iran and Russia in the Caspian Sea. He said Ukraine also hit an oil platform and a Russian missile ship in the Caspian, which is more than 600 miles away from the front line in Ukraine. Man, he's doing his bit. He's chipping in to fight Iran, isn't he, Scott?
apparently Russia's going to surrender and Iran's going to surrender because Zelensky is so damn good. Look, the Ukrainians have invested a lot of money and resources given to them by the West, or the West is investing on behalf of Ukraine intelligence resources. And they are able to go out and make things go pop, as I said. Things aren't going boom, they're going pop. And pop is a harassment. Pop is an irritant. Pop, you can take photographs of pop and show it to each other and get everybody really excited about what you see. Nothing Iran is doing is stopping. If you think that this drone attack against the ship stops the potential of Russia's flow of support to Iran, if that is indeed happening, it doesn't. You think it's going to cause the Caspian Sea not to be a Russian sea? It isn't. Look at the Black Sea. For a long time, everybody was saying, "Oh, the Iranians have taken over the Black Sea." Well, Iran lost the Black Sea because Russia just woke up and said, "All right, we're going to flex," and they flexed Iran right out, or Ukraine right out of existence. Nothing Zelensky says makes a difference. Nothing he says makes a difference. While he was saying that, talking about the supremacy of the Ukrainian long-range sanctions, as he likes to call them. There was a drone exhibition in the Bucha neighborhood of Kiev that was hit by an Iskander or two, and a lot of people died, including some Western people. They're not telling us exactly whom, but I'm not saying that they were there, but Raytheon was visiting Kiev at the same time, and drone people, Polish drone people were there. The West is ignoring the fact that while Ukraine makes things go pop, Russia makes things go boom, and Russia is making things go boom all over the place. And it's in it. The thing that the West wanted to happen in Moscow, the Moscow Maidan, where the people rose up and surrounded the Kremlin and demanded the change, and the wet dream that's existed ever since Wagner rose up, that somehow the military will step in and remove. Look what just happened in Kiev. Their corrupt little money-grabbing for defense minister got replaced, and then the head of their ground forces got replaced. And there's a major reshuffling. There are no Nazis in Ukraine, Laura Loomer says, except the people that are replacing these people are literal Nazis. The elevation of the Nazis, the reburial of Andrei Melnik, and the glorification of this. They're now going to relocate another founder of the organization Ukrainian nationalism to Ukraine. This is what Ukraine is in. I can't call it total collapse right now, but we're looking at, end game. The things that have been predicted for so long, the collapse of Ukrainian society, the collapse of Ukrainian governance, the collapse of Ukrainian economy, it's all happening in real time, sustained only by the artificial notion of Ukrainian ability to win this war because of drones. And so, yes, there's a story. A Ukrainian drone hit a Russian ship in the Caspian Sea that may or may not have been going to Iran. Who cares? Who cares? Nobody cares except the Western media that parrots this. I don't think Vladimir Putin was awoken in the middle of the night. Oh my God, they hit a ship in the Caspian. He doesn't care. If he does, it's the extent of find out who did it and kill them. And there are Russian drone units. I've spoken about one before, Rubicon, That's their job. Rubicon's job is to hunt down and kill Ukrainian drone operators, and they're very good at it. There's other units, Burevisnik, there's other units out there doing the same thing. The West isn't talking about Ukraine is losing this war on every level. There's not a single level Ukraine's winning except the information warfare level. And you can't be dismissive of it because it does what all this, the lies that echo in the West or that are being resonated in the West echo back into Russia, and and it creates a dissonance inside Russia. It doesn't mean that Vladimir Putin's in danger of falling, but the same game that was being played. I mean, past patterns repeat themselves, and you just go back and take a look at 2007, 2008 in Russia and what the opposition was trying to do at that time. The idea was, in order to keep Vladimir Putin from coming back into power, you needed to create a viable opposition that could take control of the Duma. And by taking control of Duma, you would block United Russia's ability to facilitate the swap between the presidency and the prime ministership. And so it was all about the Duma, the Duma, the Duma, the Duma, the Duma, the Duma. The same damn things happening today. Everything they're doing, the lies they're telling right now. Navalny's lies about corruption. I mean, there weren't total lies. Of course, there was corruption in Russia. I mean, my God, the decade of 1990s created nothing but corruption. And Vladimir Putin has been seeking to manage that corruption in a way that allows Russia to grow and not collapse. But you can't just kill all the corrupt people overnight. It's a system that has to be purged over time. And so, of course, it was easy for Navalny to come out and go, you do this corruptly, you do this corruptly. Yes, Alexander Navalny, of course they do. It's Russia post 1990s. Give the dude a chance, but his job wasn't to give him a chance. Today, the same stupidity is playing out where they think they can create this echo chamber that's going to remove United Russia from the parliament in September. I mean, that's the goal, that's the objective. By basically removing Vladimir Putin's party, you'll create the conditions for the collapse of Vladimir Putin. Been there, done that, got the T-shirt. Somebody once said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Everything we hear right now, this is what frustrates me. Everything we hear about this is a lie. My favorite person, Gilbert Doctorow, has come out and said that he, I was invited to a conference. No, you weren't. You were an observer of a conference where people spoke. But he said, Saldo, the governor of Kherson, came out and spoke and talked about the crimes committed to people. And he said, most people would hear that the Ukrainians were committing crimes. What I heard is that Russia lost the war. I didn't hear that. I was invited to speak at that conference. I just wasn't able to make it. I know the governor personally. I've met him. Doctorow never has. He would never say this. Yana Lantratova, the head of the Ombudsman for Children's Rights. I know her personally. She's a very close friend of mine. I know her. I know what she said. I talked to her about what she was going to say. She didn't say what Doctorow says. Doctorow takes what people says, cherry picks it, and then spreads lies. This is what's happening. People are out there. They're agents of influence, agents of chaos. They're seeking to create an echo chamber inside Russia designed to create a political result. That's just a long way of saying, Joe, we have to be careful about everything we see in Western media because it's all being controlled by the masters of information operation, the CIA, MI6. They are running a massive information operation, and they're using agents of influence who are either witting or unwitting. Doctorow did self-identify as a member of the Russian opposition since 2010. So I don't know if he's unwitting, but it is what it is.
Remind our viewers that we invited Mr. Gilbert Doctorow to come here, either as a solo guest or to debate Scott Ritter, and he's declined. So I want to ask you, Scott, the end game. It looks like Ukraine is imploding right now. While, as you say, the story in the West is they're winning the war because of the drones. If Russia wants to move on the front in the south and move on Odessa eventually, what would an attack on Odessa look like? Could they do a cauldron around a city of that size? Would there be intense street fighting, urban warfare? Would the Russian population in Odessa make it easier for the Russians to take that city? What would that look like militarily? I don't know if you've given any thought to that. I'm curious.
Well, I mean, let's just look at it's basic military math. Look at the front the way it is right now. 700,000 troops on this extended front. There's a potential of an extension even further in the north with Sumy and Chernihiv and other areas. The Russians putting forces there to draw away from. But the second you start moving into Odessa, I mean, it's just a matter of just take the pen and see what it does to the line. You see this massive extension. And if the concept of taking Odessa means linking up with Transnistria, now look at that line. You have almost doubled the frontage, which means you need troops beyond what you have. In order for Russia to even think about taking Odessa or just occupying, not taking Odessa, but occupying that land, you're talking, if it's contested, they're going to need another 500,000 troops. This is why people are saying there's talk about additional mobilization after the parliamentary elections in September 20th, although somebody has come out in Russia and said there will be, and I actually believe there will be no mobilization. I don't think Russia's looking for a fight in Odessa. Odessa is a Russian city of great historical importance, and the Russians just aren't going to go block by block by block and destroy this pearl of the Black Sea. I think what Russia's looking for is the collapse of Ukrainian resistance. The moment Ukraine stops to resist in a cohesive fashion, then the occupation of Odessa becomes possible. And I think that's the direction Russia's going. Vladimir Putin, again, I just go back to the fact that, our good friend Gilbert Doctorow wants Russia to strike Ukraine now, or strike Germany now, strike England now. But that would just simply be doing what the Ukrainians want to have happen. So Ukraine's losing because NATO isn't going to come in on their behalf. And there is no real NATO capacity. And if you take a look at what's happening in Germany, I mean in Europe, Macron is gone next year. Probably Marine Le Pen is going to be the next president of France. Good chance. She's leading the polls right now, even though she's got a monitoring bracelet on. I think she took it off temporarily. But Merz history, AfD on the ascendant. Fact is, they are the most popular political party in Germany today. So you can't nullify. They're going to be part of the next German government, whether they're leaders of it or they're, Starmer's out. We've got some dude from Manchester in there. How long he's going to last, don't know. Europe is in absolute chaos. And so now Vladimir Putin's winning. We just said he's winning everywhere. But this isn't just about winning on the battlefield. It's about winning economically. Putin spoke at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in a plenary address that everybody's ignoring, and they shouldn't. He didn't mention the war once during the plenary address. He didn't mention it once. Why? Because it's not the driving force of Russia. Vladimir Putin knows that Russia, in order to continue to expand into this sovereign nation capable of managing its own affairs without dependence upon the West, needs investment, needs foreign investment. The St. Petersburg International Forum, he created the notion of what a stable Russia would look like. And a stable Russia is not a Russia at war with Europe. That's the antithesis of a stable Russia. A stable Russia is a Russia that it has a special military operation in Ukraine that is now committed to win, but is looking elsewhere for expansion. 20,000 people from 130 nations attended, double in size from last year. $84 billion were directly invested in the Russian economy as a result of St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. That's because the world looks at Russia and says that they believe that Vladimir Putin is the leader that will take them forward. Well, he won't be that leader if he attacks Europe. The second he attacks Europe, he stops being that leader. People forget that there is an economic aspect to this. Gilbert Doctorow says he must bomb them now with an exclamation mark. Ask yourself why. It's not because he loves Russia. Then we look at politically. Sergei Lavrov just went to Africa, did a little four-nation tour. Started in Ethiopia. Uh, why? Well, Ethiopia is a nation under tremendous pressure. Tigray and the Eritrea is making a move on them and all this. So Russia came in and talked about long-term stability. Long-term stability. Russia is a good, stable friend. Russia is not a colonial power seeking to exploit Ethiopia. They're looking to invest, invest, invest. Then he went to the Sahel. I think he went to I think it was Mali he went to, but actually he met with the foreign ministers, or he might have gone to Niger. I can't remember, but he's met with the foreign ministers of all three of the AES alliance of Sahel states, and um, and he said Russia is here for you. We will never abandon you. There was just a major offensive in Mali, French-backed Tuareg rebels and Islamists moving in, and everybody said, "Ah, Russia got their asses kicked because they saw a couple dead Russian bodies on the battlefield." Yeah, well, who's dying today? Africa Corps is there, uh, you know, wiping them out. Russia's not going to leave. Russia is a foundation of stability in the Sahel, which is much needed stability given what the French were doing. Then he went down to uh, Burundi, I think, and again talked about Russian investment in Burundi, because Burundi, I think, is going to be the head of the African Union coming up. They were just they were voted in as the head of the African Union. And why is this important? In October, the Russian African Summit is getting together, and Russia is going to redefine what Africa is to the world. Russia has a global vision, and people believe in the Russian global vision because Russian diplomacy, unlike American diplomacy, is real. But if Russia went to war against Europe, that shreds everything. Russia loses credibility. Everything they're doing with China, everything they're doing to create this diplomatic, barrier against the West. Promotion of multipolarity collapses if Russia goes against. So Vladimir Putin's not going to attack Europe. Vladimir Putin is winning on all fronts, but the fronts are far more than just the military front. The front is economic and political and domestic. And again, I am confident, what the hell do I know about politics? But I'm confident that Vladimir Putin is not going to take a big hit at the polls in September. That the Russian people, like the Iranian people, were rallying around the old saying that, in Russia is especially true. You don't change horses mid-race. And Russia's sort of in a big race right now. And everybody's saying, well, we're just going to go ahead and dump United Russia, and we're going to, Gilbert Doctorow wants to fire all of the general staff. Gerasimov must go. The general staff must be fired. Why? They're winning. Gilbert, they're winning. And you want to fire them because they're winning? This is the stupidity of this approach, but it's the Western approach. The design is chaos inside Russia. I think that the Russians have a winning formula. As we see, Ukraine is starting to implode, and they will continue. People say, when? How long? It doesn't matter. As I said, Vladimir Putin will win. This war will be won when the objectives are reached. The interesting thing is diplomacy and the role that diplomacy could play. Um, Based upon the talks that Putin had with or Lavrov had with Rubio, the door for negotiated settlement is apparently still open. Um, but how do you have a settlement with a nation that's agreement incapable? Lavrov has defined the United States as being agreement incapable. How can Russia ever trust the United States, especially after first of all, you have the betrayal of Minsk, where Merkel and Hollande and Poroshenko all admit that it was all a fraud designed to buy time to build up the Ukrainian army so they could kill Russians. All right, and now you have a Putin and Lavrov both saying about Anchorage. I'd hate to believe that this was just to buy time so that they could rebuild the Ukrainian military, but it was exactly to buy time to rebuild the Ukrainian military. So now we see the Ukrainian military collapsing as we speak, collapsing as we speak. And now all of a sudden we want to have diplomacy again. Are the Russians going to fall for it the third time? I don't know. I don't know. But remember, the Russians can't turn their back on diplomacy because it's a delicate game they're playing. They're playing this delicate game of making sure that they are the nation of laws. And it's very difficult to be a law-abiding nation when your opponent is a rogue nation that adheres to no laws.
The
so Russia,
third time, the first time being Minsk, the second time being Anchorage.
yeah.
Patrick, you want to weigh in on this?
No, not much more I can say. If you just want to talk about, betrayals in negotiations, just the United States has a pretty bad record. If you combine all the other examples of that with Iran, and we could extend that to Hezbollah negotiations, Soleimani negotiations, Hamas
Yeah.
negotiations in Doha, whatever. This seems like a pretty bad pattern that we're seeing.
You can go
Yeah,
back
and
to the
yeah,
Native American treaties, but we don't want to go back that far. So
well, yeah.
thank you guys for giving me, we've spoken for 2 hours and 40 minutes. So it's an extraordinary amount of time you've given up, and I appreciate it. It was an excellent conversation. Your intervention on Iran was incredible. Patrick, thank you so much. And Scott, your interaction with him on that was really the highlight of the show, but we covered a lot of ground. I thank you, Patrick Henningsen and Scott Ritter, and I thank Kathy Bogan, our producer in Sydney. And this is Joe Lauria. I thank the audience for watching us. Please subscribe, donate to our summer fund drive, and be with us again next Saturday, 8 p.m. for another edition of The World This Week. For Conservative News, this is Joe Lauria. Goodbye.
Get out your notebook. There's more.
If you are a consumer of independent news, then the first place you should be going to is Consortium News, and please do try to support them when you can. It doesn't have its articles behind a paywall. It's free for everyone. It's one of the best news sites out there, and it's been in the business of independent journalism and adversarial independent journalism for over 2 decades. I hope that with the public's continuing support of Consortium News, it will continue for a very long time to come. Thank you so much.